Hello and welcome to the 2024 Sidequest Game of the Year episode. I'm your host, Domas, and I have with me the holiday man, Kirklin Patzer, for the first time fully joining me on a Game of the Year episode, which is very exciting. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing very good. I didn't realize it was such a special occasion, because I feel like I've recorded things for the Game of the
Yes.
Year, so it makes me think that I have done an episode before, but no, this is history in the making here. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's shifted over the years because for a while there I was doing it with Dante, and he hasn't been able to join me this year. Or last year, I just did it on my own, a little solo Game of the Year thing. But this year you kind of had some good juice to talk about, and I mean you're kind of the main Sidequest co-host at this point. I feel like so
what an
it's kind of perfect. So I'm glad that you've kind of been promoted to the Game of the Year chair at this point because this is always a very fun episode. Yes, that's what this episode is going to be all about. No games we've been playing or anything, just all about the Game of the Year. We're going to do our top lists. We're also at some point Taylor, he recorded his Game of the Year thing. That's going to get edited into the episode somewhere at some point. And then if you want to go back, Travis, I talked about this with Travis on his last Sidequest episode before he went on his little Pat Leaf hiatus here. So you can go back and check that out. I think I timestamped it in whatever that last episode he was in. So if you want to hear Travis's, you can go back and do that. So that's what this episode is all about. Just a couple quick shoutouts here. I released a new YouTube video, which might be of interest to the Sidequest listener. It is a weird hybrid of Hitman and chess. I'll just put it that way. I'll put it in the description. You can go check it out if you want. In terms of other things to check out, there are, just a million TV shows going on right now. Dexter, Star Wars, What If review is going to come out this week. Creature Commandos, you guys are crushing that. I've been sitting back. I've been relaxing hard, but Taylor and Kirkland have been going crazy. Nosferatu review you guys just recorded. So that's out on the feeds now. So yeah, and then really this week into next week, kind of just getting back into the regular swing of things. We'll probably have a newscast next week, I imagine. So yeah, lots to check out. Any shout outs on your end neck of the woods there, Kirkland?
No, I think you hit them all. A lot of reviews. It's crazy we're coming to the end of December. It's been a jam-packed month,
Yes.
but we're almost at the end.
Yeah, definitely. So other than that, hit up Patreon to get episodes early and ad-free. Last week's episode, for example, was up a few days early. And then, yeah, who wants to listen to ads? No one. So go check out the Patreon to get the best version of the episodes. And then I just wanted to, also throw a big thank you out to everyone for listening to SideQuest this year. I feel like this year maybe had a little less of like an overall identity. I feel like last year was really like the Arcane Retro was a big deal for me. And then the year before that, I think was like the first SideQuest year, or maybe the second one. But I feel like this was just kind of business as usual, just kind of same old stuff, and maybe target it more to like the games we've been playing, less talking about just like news things. So maybe that's, if anything, like that's kind of behind the scenes that has been more my focus. So hopefully that's resulted in a good listening experience for everyone. But yeah, thank you to everyone for listening throughout the year. It's been another fun one, and yeah, can't wait. January always kicks it off big with like previews and making the draft and stuff like that. I should have had the draft numbers ready to go for today, but I don't. So we'll cover that on next week's episode, something like that on SideQuest here. But yeah, let's get into this a little bit. So Game of the Year 2024, the year is officially up. Kirkland, how did you think about this year overall? Was it a great year, a mid year, an okay year, bad year for games? How do you look back on it?
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like it's not until a moment like this is happening where I'm like, not forced to, but I'm directed to look back on the year and look
spotlight
at the games that,
comes into focus.
Yeah, and like I feel like maybe I'm just getting older now. I tend to like splice like the last 2 years of game releases together. Like there's so many games that when I was making this list, I'm like, oh yeah, add that one on there, and I'm like, oh wait, 2023, and then I'm like, what the hell? Thinking back, I'm like, oh wait, it's like March of 2023. Like it's not even like it was like the tail end of 2023. Maybe it's just
what
the
was
way
that?
I
What was
play
the
games.
what was the early 2023 one?
I think that one was no, Mortal Kombat was the fall one. I can't remember what one it was now. It was
Baldur's Gate one of those for you as well? Where you're like, oh, I must have played that this year.
Definitely Baldur's Gate, because I just didn't jump into it super until
yeah.
way later, right? And
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like games that are talked about really highly, like they have the longevity. So then in my mind, it just makes, because people have been talking about it for so long, makes me think like it came out.
And I feel like
recently.
that happens often for us too. Where like I feel like when we have our winter break, little time off from work, we like binge play a bunch of different games. We might play like something from the previous year. And it's like, it wasn't on my game of the year list, but like it should be now. So I think that happens sometimes too.
It was Terra Nil. That was the game that
okay,
I
yes.
thought came out this year, just because I don't know. Did you play it last year? Like you told me about
I
it on a
did. I don't think I
Sidequest.
played
Okay,
it
yeah.
when it came out. I played it in the summer, but
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
There you go. Anyways, yeah, no, just looking back on it, I feel like it was kind of mid. I don't know, for me specifically, there was some big titles that came out, but when I think of like a great video game release year, I feel like it's like multiple like heavy hitters that could really be up for the game of the year. Like I know we had some good releases this year. Of course, games that I've played, maybe I'm focusing a little bit more on, but
Yeah.
it just seemed like there's like Astrobot, Final Fantasies I'm never really on, so like those are kind of just in like a gray area in my mind. But yeah, no, I just didn't really, I guess, get my hands on those big juicy titles that would make me think that it's like a much better year than it is. But I'm sure this is gonna happen where next year I like finally jump on to like Astrobot and these
Yeah,
2024
true.
games, and then I'm like, man, 2025 was the best year of games.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall pretty mid, and I don't want to say that how it's like super negative. Like there was still some really good games, but if I'm just looking at it like on the ocean of video game releases for me specifically, it yeah, a little bit
Yeah.
lesser.
I do feel like we are queued up for just a absolutely brutal in a good way 2025 with next GTA, Ghost of Yotai, Death Stranding 2.
right.
The new Switch is coming out, so I'm sure that's going to have some big banger games with it. Avowed for me personally, Civilization 7, Outer Worlds 2 is coming out. I'm sure like some indie games, like maybe Hollow Knight Silksong will finally come out. Maybe the Celeste developer, what's their next game called? Like Earthblade, I think. Like that's probably coming out next year. The next game from the Shovel Knight team thing's coming out next year. So there's a lot of things that will potentially be coming out, and it's going to be a heavy year. So I think that's kind of just the way the cycles go. And I think a couple things did seem to get maybe delayed out of this year. So naturally, that just kind of fills up next year's calendar. We'll see what happens there, but obviously we'll cover all that in the preview. Should be very exciting. As for myself, I think I'm in a similar boat as you. I think overall was a fairly mid-quality year, and that means that there was still a ton of great games. It's just how many games come out on a yearly basis. But when I look at my list, I was like, okay, I always kind of break my top 10 down into like the tiers of it, and like I have a top 3, and that tier is like insane. Like those are amazing, some of my all-time favorites. But then like I kind of struggled with like, what do I put 4 through 10? Like I'm not like I'm passionate about all these games. I love a lot of them, but I do feel like compared to some other years, it was like I was kind of just having to sneak things into different slots. So overall, I think it was kind of mid, and I think part of that for me is like maybe early on in the year I didn't play a whole lot of things, and a big part of that was because I released Potion Problem this year. I finally kind of got on the other side of things and released a game, and so that was a big part of the gaming year for me. It was releasing that, did a couple game jams, released a couple other smaller things as well. And so yeah, it was cool to finally get Potion Problem out in the wild, hear people play that, and see how that goes. And so yeah, that was definitely the first few months of the year. I was doing so much development that I wasn't like playing as much, just like playing the odd thing to have something to talk about on Sidequest. So yeah, it was an interesting year. It was overall a decent, good year, but yeah, not like an all timer necessarily for me. But yeah, my top 3 is a pretty strong top 3. I'll put it that way. In terms of, I always like to break it down my stats a little bit here. According to my list, I've played 49 games this year, 6 DLCs on top of that. And then since I did a couple game jams this year, I played a bunch of other people's game jam games from that. So I had a total of like 54 games I counted that I've played from those jams. And so, a lot of those are like maybe 3 minutes long or something like that, but some of them are bigger. Of that, I've considered complete or like rolled credits on 24 games overall. So pretty solid, but definitely like less than 50% of like the actual overall games I played. And I always like to look back at like, okay, is there anything that came out this year that I didn't get around to or really wanted to, just didn't have time for, that kind of thing, that I feel like would have been the top bit in like a top 10 contender? I actually didn't have many of those. I feel like I did get around to the games that I wanted to play, and of course I did miss like Final Fantasy, as you mentioned, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth looks really cool, but like, I've never played any of those games before. Who knows if it would have been top 10 contender. Really, the one I had that I wanted to shout out was Fallout London, which was like that mod for Fallout 4, which seemed huge. Like it was a whole new city, ton of quests, tons of voice acting, a whole bunch of new stuff. I downloaded and tried to get that thing to run for like multiple hours, and I could not do it. There was so many hoops you had to jump through to get it to work. And I think a big part of that is that it came out like right when they did like the next gen patch for Fallout 4, so it really like screwed that mod over because all this work that done, it was now like kind of janky and kind of foobarred. So that is like the big one that I really want to play someday, and I just love Bethesda things so much, and that sounded so good. So that's really the big omission for me. But other than that, I'm pretty happy. Is there any other big ones that you missed that you feel like, oh, I really wish I got around to that? It probably would have been like a top 5, top 10 contender for you?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like the biggest one was probably Balatro, honestly.
Okay.
I feel like that one I kind of regret not getting my hands on to at least talk about it for this episode, just because, like, obviously you were ranting raving about it, and I've seen like all the praise it was getting at the Video Game Awards, but just like other friends that like I know they play games, but they're not like hardcore gamers. They're just like, man, you have to try Balatro. Like it is the game of the year, and they're just like, yeah, they're going off about it. I'm like, man, like I got to get my grimy little mitts on that one. So Balatro for sure. Astrobot would be the other one.
Yeah. Okay.
Probably UFO 50 as well would be like my third if I had to choose. Metaphor was on my radar again, just because I heard from
I would
from
love
other
to hear
friends.
you talk about that someday. Maybe when it goes deep sale, you'll pick it up and talk about it.
Exactly. It was one of those situations where like I was looking at that and like Stellar Blade, and then I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna choose Stellar Blade. So that'll be my big video game purchase, and don't regret it because that was a fantastic game. But definitely, it seems like it hits a lot of categories of my little check boxes that I like in games, and just looks really unique and wild and very anime, which is usually up my alley.
Yeah. Very nice. Yeah, those are good. I funny talking about Balatro. I got that for my dad for Christmas to play on his iPad, which because he's always playing like little poker games, like just janky little free to play things on his iPad riddled with ads. I'm like, you need to play an actual video game, and if you are, like Balatro is one that you could at least like. There's a lot of layers to it beyond poker, but at least he knows poker well enough that I think you'd be able to understand it. So I had a couple sessions playing with him over the holidays, which was awesome. Cool. I feel like the text is very small. I feel like he was struggling to read some of the stuff in there, but that was cool to kind of have a. Because I haven't played Balatro in a few months, so it was fun to kind of see that again through his eyes.
It's funny, you just reminded me of a very quick little Christmas story. My buddy in his family is doing Secret Santa, and for his brother really wanted Skyrim, which is a random ask, and I feel like it's a very like accessible game to get. Like it's available on everything. You know, the old meme goes, you can get it on your fridge now. Like it's just you can get it anywhere. One of the most
accessible games of all time.
But he very specifically wanted a physical copy, and he wanted it on the Switch, which is just two wild things that I've heard. Apparently, it's extremely hard to find. My buddy had to purchase it. He had to purchase it on eBay.
Wow.
And like super long delivery time. It ended up arriving like literally like I don't know if it was Christmas Day or like Christmas Eve, but like right when they were about to open gifts, like it just showed up. So it's a little Christmas miracle there that is revolving around Bethesda and Skyrim.
That's interesting.
It just felt so random. Very specifically, I wanted to play Skyrim in the year 2024, almost 2025, 2011 game, but it's wild.
It's funny. That's one that has been on my Switch wish list since it got added to the Switch, and I've just never made the purchase because I'm like, would I actually play this, or do I just want the novelty of like Skyrim on the go? And so I've never actually bit the bullet. And it's funny too, I go to so many used game stores, I'm always looking at stuff, but I don't really look at the Switch section, so I don't really have a perception of how rare Skyrim is. You would assume it's kind of everywhere, but maybe it's just one of those things people don't sell, I guess. Like if they buy it, they just kind of want it forever. Right. So maybe that's why it doesn't end up back at the stores. Or maybe they just didn't print a whole lot of them. They're just people will get it digitally. Who cares? Yeah. But that's a funny situation. Okay, I have 4 honorable mentions here before we get into the top 10. Nice. 2 that I kind of have like a little award category for them is like, these are definitely top 10 if they weren't so damn buggy. And those are games I talked about recently, Stalker 2 and Metal Slug Tactics. I really enjoyed both of what those games are doing. Metal Slug Tactics I raved about on Sidequest for like almost an hour. I really love a lot of what that game is doing, but it was just too buggy. I was losing progress at the end of like hours long runs. I'm like, okay, I'm going to put this down, come back to it later. But I legitimately still considered it, putting it in my top 10 just because of how much I enjoyed what I did play. And then Stalker 2 is like, okay, this is kind of like a Bethesda game, but with more survival mechanics, a little bit different setting. So it's right up my alley, and I really enjoyed it, but also like that game is just super duper buggy. So 2 games that I feel like quality-wise and interest-wise would be top 10s for me, but just I'm gonna come back to them later. So maybe I'll regret that in the future. But I feel like they pretty much released it early access this year. Is kind of how I feel about those games. So shout outs to those. Another one is Siegebreaker, that tower defense game that I talked about a few months ago. I didn't. This one, it probably is once again top 10 in terms of quality. The reason I didn't put it in there is I just feel like there's too much bias. Like my friend made it.
Yeah.
I did play testing for it. My name appears in the credits technically. The music is from Amanda, who does the music for my game and the Sidequest theme. Like there's just too much bias. I felt like, you know what? Even though I love this game a lot and I played through the whole thing, took me 25 hours plus like all the play tests I've done over the years. I really love the game. I think it's a really great, interesting tower defense game, but just for bias reasons, decided to keep it off the list. And then the last one, I don't even know what to say about this, but it's Harold Halibut. It's a game that came out a few months ago. If you forget this one, Kirkland, definitely give it a quick Google. It has a really weird, unique art style. It's kind of made with like claymation and like stop motion, but it looks like a regular game. Like it's really interesting, but like really visually really weird and cool. I like the story. I like the voice acting. The characters are all really funny. It's a very long game, or at least long for what this genre feels like. It's a very slow paced game, and I just couldn't stick with it. I tried to come back to it a couple times, but it's just a little too sluggish, a little too long. It has more of like a TV show vibe to it more than a game. Like it is walking sim-ish. Like there's not a lot. It's mostly just walking around talking to people. But it's a really interesting game, and it's one that I wish I could have put in the top 10, but I just feel like I hadn't played quite enough of it. But yeah, I think I might like watch a playthrough the second half because I kind of want to see what happens in the story. I'm really curious, but I don't really want to like walk around this station for another like 7 or 8 hours or whatever it's going to take me to get there. So shout out to Harold Halibut. It was close on my list. Those are my honorable mentions. I guess, do you want to throw your honorable mentions now?
Yeah.
We talked about, we kind of have like different lists going on, but yeah, go for it.
My total collective list is about 11 games, so
Okay.
I'll sprinkle some in here. Starting right at the bottom, big honorable mention for WWE 2K24.
Yes.
And big
Yeah,
shouts out to
the
Travis
GM
Snell
mode.
for basically just putting, I don't know, some focal attention on this game and this is what the genre is. I love sports games. Like throughout my whole life, I've always loved sports games, but like specifically like management type mode games. I was going really hard on F1 Manager last year. I was going like, college football GM mode, like all of those types of managing just game modes in these sports games. I'm just such a sucker for, and I had no idea what you could really do in this GM mode in WWE 2K24. Didn't play like a whole lot of it. I was mostly just like feasting off of Travis, and then like after the stream I was doing a run and ended up not going well about halfway through my season. So
he makes it look easy, but
I need
he
some
just has
pointers.
so
Yeah.
much knowledge. Yeah.
Because I'm like remembering what he was telling me, and then I get into situations that isn't what he covered, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like this
right.
wasn't covered in the tutorial, but no, wanted to shout that one out just because
Big highlight for
it's
sure.
never a game it's never a game I thought I'd really be trying out or have anything in there to pull me in. But yeah, great GM mode and wild online rosters of like custom characters and stuff that you can recruit. So shouts out to WWE.
Yeah, they do some. There's been like multiple deep sales of that game since the stream, and I've wishlisted it since then. I'm like, is this worth $26? I'm like, I don't know if I want to bite the bullet yet, but someday I will pick that up, and I'm excited to get into GM mode more.
It was a PlayStation monthly game, like literally that month of the stream. So it perfect timing. But yeah,
that is perfect timing. Yeah, nice.
Just WWD. And then another one I wanted to shout out for 2024 release, game that I had a lot of fun with, but I just didn't get enough time in it for me to like really throw it on my top 5. But I think it had potential just because the fun that we had together with it. Outlast Trials.
Nice. Okay.
Really, really just fantastic addition to that genre and series, and not something I thought you could really do. Like I didn't think you could do a cooperative game mode in an Outlast game and still make it scary. Obviously it's pretty goofy, but like still it hits on the scary elements, and just playing around with the stealth and the lighting and everything. Really, really great systems, and I feel like the feel of the Outlast games, they were able to capture it and like transfer it over to the multiplayer setting. So yeah, had a lot of fun with that, and just wish I jumped into it more. I know you guys were having some sessions.
Yeah, they've had a couple updates since
Nice.
you last played, with some new levels, new villains, and stuff like that. A couple even new perks and equipment and those kind of things too.
Cool.
So yeah, we should definitely jump back in at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, those are my 2024 shout outs.
Yeah, so the way we're going to do this is Kirkland has a top 5, and then you also have I guess, 4 non-2024 games that you want to shout out, and I have a top 10, so we're going to kind of go back and forth that way. It'll be a little weird, and then we'll get into the top 5 where we're kind of matched up there. But how about we take our first break of the show? We'll be right back, and then we'll get into the top 10 and top 5-ish lists. Okay, we are back. I'm going to kick it off. I'm going to go through my number 10 and 9 here. And I always, like, as I mentioned, I like to break my top 10 down into kind of like tiers just to give a good idea of it. And I actually, my 9 and 10 are kind of in the same tier, so they're kind of interchangeable. But I'll stand with the ranking I'm giving them here today. Number 10 is where I'm going to put, and actually, okay, a little backstory to roll back here. I kind of have like multiple places I'm keeping track of things, right? Like I use Backloggd.com. That's great. It can keep track of things, very visual. But I also have like an Excel sheet where I just have tons of random info, all the games I'm playing. Because, there's a lot of things like Game Jam games I'm playing or other things that aren't really on Backlog. So I kind of keep a list outside of that too. And I every once in a while I do like throughout the year, like I think as soon as like July this year, I was like, I'm going to make a top 10, see what my top 10 list looks like currently. And it's fun to like kind of look back, because I keep track of this. I can look back on the archive and say, like, what was my top 10 a few months ago? And at some point, I totally messed up how my Excel sheet was formatted. And I've just been for the last few months making like a top 9 list of the year. And so it was kind of like in the last like couple weeks when I was really getting, coming down to the brass tacks, or like, let me make this top 10 that I'm going to etch onto the podcast here in a couple weeks. And I was like, I kind of have like an extra slot because I've been making a top 9 forever. And so now I have this 10th bonus slot. What am I going to give it to? And so that's where Indiana Jones kind of sneaks in here at the tail end. So I won't talk about this too much just because me and Taylor did the review a couple weeks ago. It's still pretty fresh. This is a game that at moments is outstanding, it's great, and then at moments it really drags and I really kind of hated it, and then it kind of runs the gamut of everything in between there, and that's where it kind of ends up falling towards the bottom of the list but still sneaks in there at the end. Really, the highlights: great story, the acting and the characters, the cinematography of it, like all that, like as an Indiana Jones movie, just super duper good. And then in terms of like the gameplay, it really varies. Like a lot of things like the stealth at moments is really great, but other times it doesn't really make sense. Combat is like really funny and slapstick, but then also gets like too confusing and weird and like unruly to actually like really engage with. And then, just the different areas that you're going to really varies in terms of quality. Some areas really sucked. Some of them were fantastic. And I forget if I messaged this to you, to Kirkland, or if I just was talking to you before a podcast or something, but I mentioned you like, this game's giving me Dishonored vibes. And I think, I can say now at the end of the experience, like, okay, that kind of wasn't the case by the end of it. I think it was just like the first main area you get to, the first open worldy sort of zone. It's like very reminiscent of the Dust District from Dishonored 2 in terms of the verticality, in terms of how expansive it is, in terms of the visual style. And so, and in terms of the freedom, like those immersive sim elements to the game. And so it was really giving me Dishonored vibes early on. That kind of faded as I went along, but still, like, if you're even giving me Dishonored energy, then like you're already doing a great job as a game. Visuals and music are fantastic. So overall, I had a really good time with this game. It just had some moments where it really dragged, but yeah, still happily putting it in the top 10 there. And then number 9 for me is going to be Animal Well, which is a game that was really high on my list for most of the year, and then just kind of has steadily dropped. And I think that's just because it's almost like anti-recency bias, where as it's gone along, I'm kind of forgetting what were the moments I love the most in this game. And I can think of distinctly like the mysterious vibes, the art style is fantastic, the sound effects, like it's just such a weird, interesting world, and I really love that part of it. And as far as Metroidvanias go, I like that this is a Metroidvania, but like the items, you can get them in different orders, and they all kind of have multiple uses, but none of that's really tutorialized either. You're kind of just figuring these things out you go along, and so it just feels like it finally feels like what like Metroidvania has always been a tricky genre for me to really get into, but this is like the perfect one where it's less like, okay, you have to go here to get double jump and then go back here and jump up here to get the missiles, and then it's less like specific orders and more just free form, and I really like that part of it. And yeah, I think it really stood strong with me. The parts where it maybe drops a bit is that some of the bigger mysteries or bigger challenges and puzzles are things that like not one person is supposed to solve. They're supposed to be like community things where you're kind of compiling info, looking for things together. In some games that works for me, like Deathloop, I remember doing a lot of that, like talking to community members and Discord servers and trying to figure things out. But for this game, it didn't really have that for me. So I think there's some crazy things I heard this game does that I just never really experienced. And some of it like only happens on PC as well, whereas I was playing on Switch. Like one weird thing that I've heard is like if you get to a certain ending or moment, and if you like are playing on PC and you have a printer plugged in, it'll like print out a sheet of paper just like
Ooh,
without
that's creepy.
asking, and like that's cool and interesting. But like, okay, I play on Switch, so I guess I'm just
Wasted
like
mother's ink. She's gonna beat
yeah,
me.
exactly. Yeah, I guess. So. But it's like I don't know. I just played on Switch, so like there's certain things I just couldn't really experience with it. I suppose. I don't know if there is some weird Switch thing that they did, but I did not encounter it. So anyway, really cool, interesting game. I'm really excited to see what that developer does next. It's definitely one of those ones where yeah, whatever he makes next, I'm gonna pick up and play. But yeah, there you go. There's my number 9. So Kirkland, do you want to start with your I guess one of
Yeah.
your non 2024 games, game of the other year? As I've heard them called
Absolutely,
before?
game of the other year. I guess yeah, I'll just talk about these two together because I kind of forgot that Steam does Steam wraps. You know, how we get the Spotify
yes,
wraps
yep.
every year. You and I like talked about them on like a game of the year in the past or something like that, and then I can't remember how many years ago that was, but I was very shocked by my results this year, and mostly about the share, like the spread of the amount of games or maybe lack thereof that was really preoccupying my Steam time. Apparently 68% of my games played on Steam this year was literally just Total War Warhammer 2.
Oh,
like
okay.
like
I thought you were gonna not say Total War, and that was the
No,
reveal.
no.
But I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
I just feel like I haven't played that game in like a couple months now. Watch Nosferatu, go check out that review, but like a lot of like Warhammer elements are in that movie in a weird
okay.
aspect. So it got me wanting to jump back in there and play one of two different campaigns. And of course it like shows you like the months that you're really popping off on, and it's
Yeah.
like right before summer was like that was the only thing I was doing, like June July era maybe, and then for the summer like I was doing a bunch of home renos, so I like wasn't really playing much, and then like September it just spiked again because it's like as soon as my renos were over I was just ready to go
Nice.
back in Total Warhammer. And then basically since September till now the rest of the time has just been Project Zomboid. Like I have just been going on a tear on that game. I know you and I
Nice.
haven't jumped into it together
We
yet.
really
I'm
struggled
very
to
much
find
looking-
a time. I could play tonight if you're around tonight, but let me.
I might be available tonight.
Okay,
So
maybe
let's,
tonight it'll finally happen.
let's link together. But no, I was going super hard on that game. And those were kind of like my two games on Steam. Like of course there's like a couple other ones that just bounced in here and there. But yeah,
Did
it's
it
like
tell you how many hours you had in Total War just this year, or does it only show you your overall playtime?
I don't know. Maybe I can pull it up while I'm.
I'm
looking
guessing you
around
put in
here,
at least
but-
another 100 or 200 hours this year on that game, but maybe.
Yeah. I would say a couple hundred. If it's 68% of like my total time played, I feel
Yeah.
like that's a good, because even Project Zomboid, I feel like I put in like
Yeah, true.
over 45 hours on that game
Yeah,
alone,
yeah.
which is double what I had like before then. So
Gotcha.
yeah, I've been going hard on it, and there's been a long anticipated big update on that game. It's called Build 42, which is like, air quotes, it's gonna be changing the whole game. Like there's just adding like so many different elements, refining like the whole crafting system, and it's in what's it called, unsteady mode or unstable mode. That's what it is right
Okay.
now. So like you can play it, but you just might get a lot of bugs.
Right,
But
right.
we're getting close to the actual release, so a lot of people are frothing at the mouth for that one, and I'm a little worried because I feel like I've learned the game a certain way, but now they're like changing a lot of different elements. So it'll have to be
Always sketchy, yeah.
always sketchy, but that game is just so fantastic. I can't wait to jump in there with you. But yeah, I think I'll throw those as my non-2024 games of the years. Total War will probably be in there as long as I live, until they do Total War Warhammer 4, if they ever do that. Or there's rumors around like what next IP Creative Assembly is going to get to do their next Total War game.
Right.
Because of course Warhammer is like a separate entity. A lot of people have like just been hinting at Lord of the Rings a lot of the years, which of course would get my money, but like I also feel like Warhammer Fantasy is pretty close to that already. I was on the subreddit, somebody was talking about like a Star Wars IP. I don't think that
Well,
would
I
ever
guess
happen.
they're back on Alien now because they're making Isolation 2, right?
Actually, wow, I totally forgot about that. Yeah, that's a good point. I always forget that Creative Assembly did that.
I know, it's
such
such a weird
bizarre.
pocket. They're like, yeah, we'll just make one FPS horror game in our career, and it's just one of the people's favorites of all time.
And then we'll just go back to playing like Total War only games, which kind of
Yeah.
follows the same. Same. Anyways, yeah,
Cool.
I'll mention those two games as my non-2024 ones.
Okay. All right, moving on then. Next up, we're jumping up. I'm just calling this the solid tier, which may be a generic title for it. But this is definitely a tier up from the last two games we talked about. Number 8 for me is going to be Pacific Drive. So I talked about this
Nice.
recently. I have a lot of recent games on my list, just as a little spoiler there. But yeah, I finally beat this game now. It took like over 20 hours to beat like one run of it, which is not what I expected because it is kind of a roguelike game. I kind of thought it would be shorter runs than like there's like 8 different difficulty tiers in the game, so I thought the idea would be like do a shorter run, then kind of keep bumping up that difficulty. Not quite the case, so a little bit different. I think at some point in my life I'll definitely go back and play a higher difficulty level. This is a weird game where it doesn't have any super high highs, but it doesn't have any low lows either. It's just a consistently good time through that 20 hours. I think by the end, I was really trying to just see the end of it, but I think that's part of it is just because of the difficulty I was on too. Like I wasn't being challenged as much anymore, so there wasn't really anything stopping me. I didn't need to keep upgrading and grinding for hours to just get to the end game content. There are some really cool moments at the end of that game. Like there's some certain missions you have to do where you have to like race through these pylons and you're like on a timer, but then there's so many things attacking you and striking you as you do it that are trying to stop you. And if you're like, if you bump into something, that might mess up your time. You got to restart the thing now, but then like the level's collapsing in on you. Like it just gets totally chaotic. So that was really cool. Some of the later areas get really weird and mysterious. I love the just gameplay loop of it. Go out in these levels, hunting around, searching for things, and then always that intense escape from the mission was always good every single time I did it. And then getting back to my shop and just like upgrading, putting decorations up in my shop, upgrading the car, switching out my parts, turning the radio on, just fueling up the car, sitting back, relaxing. Like I just had so much fun with it. The customization of your car is really, really great and in depth, and there's so much stuff on the quote unquote skill tree that I didn't even get to by the time I was beating the game. There's just so much in there that you could keep going and doing. And I think something that really surprised me too is like I really enjoyed the story, the voice acting. You never like see another human, but there's voice acting in there, people talking to you on the radio, Firewatch style, and like all the performances are really good. It's got me excited. Like they just announced it, they're making a TV show for Pacific Drive, which is a really random IP to get a TV show, but like based off the level of performances and the kind of weird, mysterious story, it feels a little Alan Wakey. Like I feel like that will be a good fit for this potentially. So I'm looking forward to see how that show comes along. But yeah, I just had a great time with Pacific Drive. Really, really solid time. And definitely want to revisit at in the future as well. There's a lot to it. So shout out to Pacific Drive. Sorry, did you have other game non-24 things you want to shout out? So we go back and forth, or should I just? Okay, cool.
I figured we'd sprinkle them in a peaceful
please.
manner. Next one I'm going to shout out, big credit to you, Hitman here. Finally got my
nice.
grimy little mitts on it, and man, what a time it's been. It's been long waited. I played a little bit of like the first iteration of that game, but now having like the total collection, that of course I haven't, fully gone through yet, but I'm glad I got it and on the PlayStation, and just we've talked about it so many times. I don't want to just repeat what I've said in the past, but yeah, what a time it's been. And, if you're like me and you think it's, you kind of miss the boat, you never miss the boat. The servers are still live on Hitman, so get on there and, just perfect those kills.
I've been playing that like fiendishly for the last few weeks here. Just like totally back into it, doing all these things I never seen before, going back into freelancer mode, which is infinitely playable.
Yeah.
It's just so freaking good. I can't get enough of that game.
Yeah.
Hence why I made a YouTube video on it about a very random topic, but I'm just so passionate about it right now. Shoutouts to Hitman. My number 7 is going to be one that you had an honorable mention for, and that's Outlast Trials for me. This ended up making it into the top 10, and I think big part of that was like revisiting it recently and still really enjoying it, checking out some of the new content for it. I think it's always tricky to rank a game like this, which is like if me, you, Travis, and Taylor played any 4-player co-op game, I'm sure we would have had like just as much fun as we did playing Outlast Trials. If you play a game with your friends, who would have thought you would have a good time? But I do think Outlast Trials is a really well-designed game, and especially after going back and playing Outlast 1 and 2 this year as well, just seeing like the differences and the evolution of some of the mechanics that it does there too. I love the like Saw-like setting of this. I think it's really well-designed. Really scary game, like the enemy design and like how smart the enemies can be at certain times, and like how they just feel like true adversaries is really good. Just so many different types of puzzles and like level locations that you're seeing. like pretty good RPG mechanics. Always feel like you're unlocking some cool new stuff in a way that doesn't make it too easy, because then you can just ratchet up the difficulty even more. It's yeah, like there's so much here, and it's a game that I just want to keep playing for the next few years. Like just every once in a while, jump in and check out a few of the new levels or the old ones and try them at higher difficulty levels. I just had a really great time with this, and obviously it got me so invested in the series that I went back and played those first 2 games this year as well. So yeah, shout out to Outlast Trials. Just a really solid good time the whole way through.
Hell yeah.
Yep.
Hell yeah. I'll shout out another one here. Dylan, one game has taken up pretty much 90% of my holiday time. This is a big game, one that I've kind of been putting off for a long time for no specific reason. We're getting a sequel next year. I've been getting fully entrenched in Death Stranding this holiday break.
Okay,
and
yeah.
I must say, it is like a perfect holiday game.
Yes.
They have... I don't know if this has always been a thing, but like around Christmas time, all the characters are like wearing Christmas hats too. So it just
That is
feels a
new.
lot more.
I don't remember seeing that.
It just feels a lot more festive when I'm, delivering packages. It feels like I'm just Santa Claus, making people's day. And I was up till like probably closer to 4 a.m. last night because I was just like, yeah, I'll finish this run and then I'll do this, and then I get another order. I'm like, okay, well, I kind of want to do this now.
It's not
and
too
then,
far
and then-
away. I could
yeah,
do
and then
that.
I'm like 90% done what I was building over here, so I'm just gonna do one more run, and like it literally just snowballed like that, and that's been kind of my gaming for the holiday break, and just such a amazing game. Like I'm
Hell
just,
yeah.
especially I'm still in that early port. Well, I feel like I'm early portion. I was talking to Hidalgo about it. He says I'm about halfway through the game based
Okay.
on like story purposes.
That's not nothing, man. That game is long, so if you're halfway through, that's pretty good.
And I feel like I was on one specific chapter for a very long time, but I kind of
Yeah.
do missions, and then I don't know, I just want to build up my connection level. Like I've been just like 5-starring a lot of these places I'm coming
Nice.
through, and then just like building up kind of the roads as I go along too. So I think I'm like right at the end of the Fragile chapter, which I think is chapter
Yeah.
3 or 4.
I can't remember like the name. I do remember
Yeah.
though that like the early chapters are pretty lengthy, and then I feel like it starts to book it. Like through the later
Okay.
chapters, you like crush them a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Even if you're not like mainlining them, there's just like less quests in them overall. So you'll start to I think really pick up steam
Nice. Yeah.
in that
And
back half.
because I feel like I'm still early in the game. Like I'm still getting like new mechanics and new like equipment and stuff,
Mhm.
and I'm just like a kid in the candy store. I get like something new. I'm like, oh my god, this just changes my whole transportation like setup or how I can handle different just routes and whatnot. So I'm just loving it. I'm in my golden era of enjoying this game, and I still don't really know any spoilers for the story. So like
Nice.
I'm feasting for this game, and knowing that Death Stranding 2 was out next year, I was late to the game this time around. I don't want to be late to the game for Death Stranding
Nice.
2, so I want to be fully caught
Very
up and ready to
exciting.
go. I imagine that's like fall next year. Do we
I don't
remember the
know.
date?
Yeah, I guess I was
I
kind of
assumed it would be
expecting to
something
get
like
a Game Awards like trailer and
Yeah.
announce date for that, but we didn't. So I'm not sure when it could be, but
Yeah.
hopefully the sooner the better. I want to, because it's a long one. I want to have time. I guess the
Yeah.
last one did come out in November, I think. So if they go for that again, then I guess we're
Feels like a
waiting.
fall game.
Yeah.
Just with the
Yeah.
weather and stuff that you're coming through, the rain.
Yeah. Have you
tide,
been to
fall
like
events.
snowy sections yet? Have you?
I'm
gotten-
like at the base of a snowy area.
Okay.
I haven't gotten like, I don't know, specific like heating gear that I know that you get.
Okay.
That maybe I'll say that much, but no, it's just so fantastic. I love it. I love Norman Reedus as the player. I love the music in it. I love everything about this game, and it's a travesty. It took me this long to really enjoy it. The last character I was interacting with, I'm like, man, this guy looks familiar. It was Conan O'Brien, and it just
Yep.
tripped me out. Totally forgot there's like celebrities in this game.
Jeff Keighley is in there. Yeah.
Jeff Keighley. I haven't seen him yet, I don't think, unless he's an earlier.
I think he's a pretty
appearance.
minor
Okay.
character. Yeah.
They usually
He's
are.
in
Conan
one little house.
O'Brien, he's wearing like
Yeah.
a walrus hat or something. But no, it's fucking amazing. And also, did you ever play the director's edition where they like added some things?
No, there's a lot of stuff like beyond the Santa hats that you were talking about. Like there's
Yeah.
definitely a lot of things that I remember seeing. And I'm like, man, I've just never even experienced. Like they added like races and like other.
I was just gonna say, like, I
vehicles and
just-
things that I haven't seen. So
I just finished like a racetrack that you build
Yeah,
in
I
like
never
a
saw
southern
any of that
area,
stuff,
and I was
yeah.
like doing time trials. I'm like, what game am I even playing right now? This is so wild. And like, I think it's a new edition. You can make like giant bike jumps, and you can do like tricks and stuff off them. Like,
yeah,
it's
that's
just
definitely. I don't remember that.
so because this is all fresh to me, and I'm playing the director's cut. Like, I don't know what was added or whatnot, but it's all great. It's all fantastic, and I'm loving it. I'm loving it so much.
Yeah, I love that the vehicles I mean, whenever you get a new type of vehicle, it feels like such a big
Oh
monumental
man.
moment, but they also are all so limited in certain ways, so it doesn't
Yeah.
just feel like the game becomes a steamroll. Like the bikes, like always running out of juice. I remember getting like a truck or something later, and it's like it can carry a lot of stuff, but this thing sucks at going anywhere. So you
Oh
gotta
yeah.
like, if you're not on the road, this thing's pretty much useless. And so it just turns into like chaotic moments where you like brought way too much than you can carry, and then you have to ditch your vehicle. Then you gotta like plan this out. So yeah, that game just sprinkles in the new mechanics so well throughout.
Yeah. So you don't get overwhelmed, right? Like it's not
Yeah.
too much at once. And yeah, no, I recently got the truck and it just changed the whole like crafting of the roads. Cause like
Mm-hmm.
early on, I was just like I didn't even have the little traveler carts with you. So I'm just like building these roads by going back and forth with like what I can carry on my back. And now it's just I just pile up my truck with what I can carry, and then if I get into a situation like you said, like it's rocky and I can't really get my truck there, I pull out my traveler carts, I load up on my gear
Yeah.
there, and I just have such like a perfect system now where I do like a pre-trip checklist of like, hey, I got my container repair spray, I got my extra carts if I need. Like I don't know, especially like when you just do so many of them, you realize what you kind of need. Usually is always need like 2 ladders on me because you never know. Sometimes
Yeah.
you need more than just one, right? So just aspects like that, I feel like makes the game just like the gameplay loop just so fun of just thinking about planning these routes. And yeah, I love it. I go on and on. Obviously, I'm like in the midst of it right now. I was playing right before this cast. Like
Yeah.
I just want to get back in there.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay, let's move along, and that way we can get you to back to Death Stranding sooner.
Yeah.
Number 6 for me is a game that I played just a few days ago, Kirkland. I don't think you've heard of this one. It's called Mouthwashing. Have you heard?
I saw it on your Backloggd.
Okay,
I'm not
okay.
often on Backloggd. I usually go on there when we're compiling lists like this because it's a great resource for that. But then I saw it. I'm like, what the fuck is this, Dylan?
Yeah.
What is this mouthwashing game?
I know, silly name. So this game came out, I think, in like September or something. I remember hearing like on the podcast I listened to people praising it then, and it was really good. And then it just, I think it kind of reminded when I was listening to some of the Game of the Year episodes from other podcasts recently, and like, oh yeah, mouthwashing is just like high on all of their lists. So it wasn't just like a little flash in the pan. Oh, this was kind of cool. This is like a game that is a great game, and so it's up my alley. So I was like, okay, let me pick this up. It's like $15 or something on Steam, pretty cheap. So I picked it up last week and played through it because it's pretty short. It's like 2 hours long, and it's like all narrative and story. So it's hard for me to talk about too much without spoiling. So I'll try and do my best here. But yeah, it does have a silly name. That name does mean something, but I don't want to. I don't want to spoil what the name even means there. But yeah, for anyone who doesn't know about this one, this is a first-person, kind of PS2 style narrative horror game, I guess would be the best way to describe it. And the setting is that you and this crew are on this space cargo ship traveling, delivering something. And then, something goes wrong. You hit like a meteor or something like that, which throws the ship into disarray. And then it's kind of just about like what these people did, in the months, whatever weeks, whatever days, whatever the timeline is. After that, I think one thing that I loved about this game that games do not frequently do, but is very common in movies, is like so many movies. Think about how many movies are improved by having like non-linear storytelling, right? Like the story is pretty basic, but because you chop it up and tell it in weird ways, that's why the story becomes so good. Like Nolan's doing that all the time, Tarantino's doing it all the time. It's a very common thing. But like games, like almost never do that, right? Because if you have a longer game and you have like progress and you're getting items, it's like kind of weird to like go out of order. No, I don't have
Yeah.
all this stuff. It's I understand why games don't do it, but because you have like a shorter game like this, only 2 hours long, it like uses that element of it, the non-linear part, super duper well in a way that I want to see other games try. I realize, as I just mentioned, like it is hard to do. It's a big design problem for games, but I think this game is very unique because of that. Yeah, as I mentioned, the very story-heavy game, very intense. A lot of topics in here like sexual assault, addiction, and I feel like games don't really tackle those things very often, or if they do, maybe they take it in like a much more straightforward way. This feels like it has some really nuanced takes or perspective on those kinds of things that I thought was really interesting. I love the art. This is very similar art to the Tartarus Key. That was like that horror puzzle game I talked to you a couple of years ago, Kirkland. So this looks very much like that. The music is outstanding, super duper good. It's just a game that really made me think about a lot of things in my life and myself, and like things I want to better about myself. Like it was a very introspective experience, even if it's like a very over the top and like crazy thing that I can't really relate to, being on a space freighter and crashing into a meteor. But like it still made me think about a lot of things. and like the final moments come together when it drops into credits. It just has like this amazing song as the credits going by, and I just like had my head in my hands and I was just like vibing to the music and just like thinking about things. Like it's a crazy game that takes you all sorts of different places. Because of all the stuff I'm just talking about here, like it was a really hard game for me to rank. One, the recency. You know, I don't want to give it too much recency bias because I literally played it like 5 days ago. But also, it's like, how do you compare this to like a 40-hour long like open world RPG? How do you compare to this to like Outlast Trials? Like it's very hard. So I'm happy with here being at 6th, but honestly, it could have jumped up because this, as of 6, 4, 5, and 6 are kind of in their own little tier. So it could have shifted even higher, but I felt like I should be careful of some recency bias here. But super duper great game. Highly recommended if what I've described sounds interesting. It's also really funny and it's weird. It's just a really, really great, interesting, weird game. So big recommendation for me on mouth washing. Don't let the weird name. I mean, the weird name should draw you in. It shouldn't scare you off. But even if you just look at a couple screenshots, you'll see the vibe of this game. But yeah, it's super duper good.
The cover art just made me think it was a gross game 'cause it's like an eyeball or something.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
thinking of like Carrion or something. I'm like, what is this?
Yeah.
Mouth washing also is the title. But
a lot of
cool.
weird body horror stuff. So if you're not into that, maybe be warned. I didn't find it too scary for the most part.
Yeah.
There is a couple like jump scary type things, but yeah, I'd say it's more the vibes, more like thriller vibes than like in terms of deep horror, I guess would be the comparison. In terms of gameplay, like it's pretty basic. You're mostly just walking around talking to people, and there's a couple light puzzles, things like that. Nothing too crazy. It was fine. It keeps you, just kind of breaks up the story beats. But yeah, super duper recommend mouth washing. Really great game. Yeah.
Cool. I'll give my final non-2024 title here. Kind of enter in my top 5 for the year. Last one, spoke to you about it many, many times, but it would have to be none other than Cult of the Lamb.
Yep.
Kind of rediscovered this one and honestly just had so much more fun on a second time ago. And really it was because Shay and I played it together on the couch co-op, and it's just a perfect game mode to pair with that game. And I highly recommend that game to pretty much anyone, but especially if you are in a situation you can play couch co-op with someone, it just makes it that much better. And really liked all the systems that they added. Wish it was a little bit less buggy, but clearly it was that good of a game that I just kept going back even if I had like crashes and whatnot. Like it just, I love the music in it. I love the gameplay loop, and yeah, no, it's fantastic. I don't know if we're really going to be jumping back into it because we kind of did everything we can, other than like going for the platinum, which is just finishing off a couple collectibles, which kind of is a little bit grindy, and I feel like we're just kind of past that point of enjoying the magical aspect of just like looping through because we've just done it so many times. But yeah, like I probably like around 80 hours we got out of that, which is pretty crazy for a game that I've already like played in the past. And yeah, it felt very fresh and new. So that would definitely be my non-2024 game of the year if I had to give a ranking.
Very, very good. Right on. Okay, so after this, we're going to both get into our top 5s of the year. But let's take a quick break. First, we will actually throw to Mr. Taylor Field. You will all hear him and his game of the year, and I haven't listened to this yet, so I don't even know what he's going to pick. But you will hear from him. You'll get a little ad break, and then we'll come back for the top 5. We'll be right back. Okay, we are back. What'd you think of Taylor's game of the year?
Good list, Taylor. Good list. Couple picks on there
list.
surprised me. Couple picks didn't surprise me. So
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
All right on. Let's get into our top 5. Top 5 for the year. Number 5 for me is going to be The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. This is I feel like I have a different take on this from some people in that for everyone who played Tears of the Kingdom last year, they loved it and that was like their game of the year or like easily in their top 3. But I really bounced off that game. It did not do it for me. And this was almost like weirdly a return to form. This is kind of like what I want from Zelda. It felt very fresh, even if it is kind of inspired by Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom in a few ways. But I really enjoyed going back to top-down Zelda here, having something a little bit more confined. You know, maybe it took me 20 hours, maybe 25 once I got all the collectibles, which I went back and did. I really just love the fun, like the core mechanic here of grabbing echoes and spawning absolutely whatever. It leads to just total jank. It leads to like every single puzzle or action beat or any single thing in the game is going to be just solved individually by someone like differently, and everyone's gonna have their favorites. And it was funny listening to some podcasts and hearing people like, "Oh, this is my favorite enemy type to use," and like I had very different ones from them. And there's so many weird, creative, interesting things you can do. It's just a fun, cool game. I think it has, this is Geek for Sidequest. This game has amazing side quest design. Almost every single side quest was like interesting or cool and not just like some boring fetch quest. And there was like quite a few of them, and I thought that was like a really, really great part of it. It made it really easy to want to go back and do every single thing, because like every side quest was like giving me like, oh, this is now one of my favorite quests in the game. Like it just consistently did that. I think the puzzles and stuff and all that really, really well designed. And it also like did kick back at me sometimes. Like it had some challenging fights, some really challenging moments that took me multiple tries to get through. And so I'm appreciative of that. I think for the most part, it does kind of get somewhat easy by the end of it, just because you have so many things at your disposal that you can do. And that's maybe one nitpick, is like navigating through all the items can be a bit much when you have like all 140 whatever items there is. It's like a lot to like scroll through, and there's no organization really. But man, I just had, this was just a fun game from start to finish with really no low moments whatsoever. So yeah, I had a great time with Zelda, and it's been a while since I've fallen in love with the Zelda game, so I was really, really happy to have this one here. And hey, it was cool to play Zelda.
Nice.
And dress up in funny costumes that she gets and do some silly stuff in the world. Spawn a horse by like, you get a horse by like just spawning a carrot. The horse will come eat the carrot. You can ride the horse,
Nice.
fly around, all this. Just such a fun, weird, interesting game. So yeah, my number 5 of the year.
That's awesome. Yeah, that one was on Shay and I's radar, just for like
Yeah.
the cute aesthetic of the art style. It was,
Yeah, it's got that Link's Awakening aesthetic, and I really like
Yeah.
Link's Awakening too. So it felt that team, whatever team is making those two games, I really like their
Mhm.
little pocket of Zelda games. Hope they keep making them.
I like how Zelda also just has like it's almost like own multiverse, but it's
Yeah.
like based on like different art styles, right? Like you have like
Definitely.
the Toon Link, you have like the more realistic Link, I guess, from titles like Twilight
The
Princess
Ghibli
and
Link with the
Ghibli
Breath
Link,
of the
yeah.
Wild, yeah.
Yeah, so I
Pixel
like,
art Link.
I like what they have. Okay, so my top 5 game of the year, one that didn't hit the best for like what my expectation was going to be for it,
Okay.
but it was still a really cute game that was really unique. I got the Plucky Squire here,
Okay,
number
nice.
5. I ended up rolling credits on it. I went through and did
Ooh.
finish the game.
Well done.
I like the ending. I like the battle with the last boss, but like we kind of already talked about on the review, and you were making a point of emphasis on just a little bit lackluster on like the real world. Like when you get out of like the book, I wish there was a little bit more mechanics that you had there. It just seemed like most of the time it was like a bridge to get back into the storybook, where like the more interesting mechanics were for me. At least that was my I don't know, overall experience for it. But really like the music, I really like the characters, and yeah, it was still just like a really cute, unique story that. Well, story pun not intended, because it's a storybook, but just the adventure, I think, of these characters and the narrator, I thought was really fun, but didn't quite hit to the peak like maybe I thought it was gonna be,
Yeah.
where it's like a game of the year type contender, because I really feel like that's what I got from like the first trailers, because it was just so unique and a real original type of way to do a game. Sure, there's other games that have done something similar, but
Yeah. Yeah, what did you think? Breaking up some a little bit of spoilers here for this, like, because to me, like once it's like the Dark World, like when the villain takes over the book and it changes the book, like that 3D segment of like his climbing through his castle, like I thought that was kind of the peak of maybe one of the peaks of the game for me. Did you enjoy that whole sequence?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like because we were going in areas that I wasn't expecting. It's almost like in Resident Evil 8 going into the castle. All of a sudden, a very different style what the game was. But yeah, I would say yes, because it feels maybe like the most mature. Like the game overall, it's pretty simple mechanics. You know, like I feel like it is a game that's pretty accessible to everyone. But it's nice when you can have moments that kind of shift the overall tone. So yeah, I would agree that it's probably my peak of the adventure, especially because. I don't know. I feel like it peaked early on, and then when you're just like replaying some of the, not necessarily replaying things, but just going through you like the same situation of handling similar mechanics, it kind of plateaued a little bit, and then of course the castle stuff made it more intriguing.
Yeah, I saw that they added recently. I just found an article here. The Plucky Squire added a streamlined mode, offering quicker dialogue and less hand holding for kind of just move through it quicker. And to me, those are like some of my main complaints with it, is like just a little sluggishness at times. So it's too bad. That's like it's kind of like how Sifu added like the easy mode like months later after I was kind of already done with the game.
Yeah.
But that sounds like that would just greatly improve the experience, just having a couple of those little tweaks there. I mean, that it's kind of like, hey, they heard feedback. This is what people didn't like about the game.
Mhm.
We'll just add a mode that like removes the thing people don't like. So that's pretty cool that they added that in there. Hopefully, people going forward will have just an even better experience with that game than we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agree.
Cool. Okay, number 4 for me. I was very surprised. Before this game came out, I did not expect it to even be like a top 10 contender. Even early hours, I didn't really think it would be, that high for me. But by the end of it, and it's almost like a boring, unoriginal pick. And not many people have this, but I got to be true to myself, and this is my number 4, and that is Star Wars Outlaws. Can you believe that,
Nice.
Kirkland? Isn't that crazy? Me, the
I
Star
knew you were a
Wars hater.
big fan of it.
Yeah. Another one that I think I put like maybe 30 hours into it. I didn't do every single side quest, but I did quite a few of the major side quests, did all the main quest stuff, obviously rolled credits on the game. And yeah, I just had a ton of fun with this game across the board. I think it does a lot of things really, really well. And this is coming from someone who's, not really a Star Wars fan right now, not really generally a fan of like the Ubisoft formula stuff. I think they had to go a bit of a different direction since they wanted multiple planets rather than it being one huge open world with things everywhere. It's kind of like these more smaller distinct areas that are still like fairly expansive, and I think those vary in quality, and you get some interesting ones where like the first main planet, I think it's called Toshara or Toshada, something like that. That's kind of like the peak of the game for me, but because of the way the game's structured, it's not like you're going from one open world, okay, now I'm on the second one, now I'm on the third one. You're constantly kind of going back and forth between these areas, and so it was kind of always one I was happy to revisit. Of course, you have the what's the sandy planet called again?
Tatooine.
Yeah, Tatooine. That's kind of the one more legacy like Star Wars location that everyone knows and loves, and that's a great location. One of them is like a smaller snowy area, and that one you don't even really like use your bike. You don't even go around. It's just like a really dense city, and I really like that just as like variety's sake, right? And the fact that you're jumping around between them. So, kind of had like a little bit of peaks and valleys, but for the most part, it was like a really solid experience. I really enjoyed the combat, and I really loved the stealth in this game. I feel like every review, every podcast I heard, everyone's like, the stealth sucks, stealth is not fun, stealth is too hard, all this stuff. I loved it. I feel like I play a lot of stealth games, so I don't know, I can't really understand a lot of these criticisms that people have, but I thought it worked really, really well. There were a couple missions that like you auto fail if you lose the stealth, but I only had to redo those like maybe 2 or 3 times, and you get like a lot of checkpointing. So I really like that. Nyx, who's like your little companion buddy, is like a great multi-tool where he can like distract people or knock people out or go mess with the wiring on the wall or distract this camera so you can sneak by. Can go fetch collectibles for you so you don't have to go do all this annoying platforming to get to stuff. Can open like levers to get you through like levels it's just such a great multi-tool. It does so much, and he's a cute little guy too. So I think he was a great addition to the game. I like the hacking and lockpicking mini games in this, especially the lockpicking one. I think is really fun. The faction system is really cool, where there are 3 or 4 of these outlaw like underworld factions, and each quest you're doing, you kind of have to balance like if I do this, I'm gonna earn some favor, some rep in this one, but I'm gonna like just dunk my favor with the huts or something like that. And this kind of constant balance that you're doing worked really well for me. And when you're in good standing, you can like use their shops, go through their locations without having to do stealth sequences. And for me, it was like a perfect balance of constantly these dials going up and down. It made it really fun and engaging. I think the RPG mechanics are really good, upgrading your gear, your character, your ship, and all that stuff. I didn't really like the ship stuff, like any of the space combat. I pretty much didn't engage with that stuff at all. Just like whatever the main quest had me do, and then I left. And that was fine, because I didn't really have to spend many hours on that stuff. But yeah, I just had a great time going around this world, collecting things to get cool upgrades or accomplishing side quest, going around, maybe playing, I forget the name of the game. There's like a poker card game that you can play. Had a good time messing around with that. So yeah, just had a really great time with this game the whole way through. And yeah, I think there's even DLC coming out. I would want to go back and check that out. I played it through Ubisoft Play or Plus that I'm not constantly subscribed to. So I don't know when I'll get to it, but yeah, I'm really surprised that this is on my list and as high as it was, but I can't lie. I just had a great time with Star Wars Outlaws. So there you go. There's my normie pick for the list.
If only we could get a movie that was that good.
And you know
or
what?
just a Star Wars movie.
Yeah, I am bummed that this game just bombed. Like, it didn't do very well.
Yeah.
And so it's just not going to get a sequel, and I think that's too bad, because I think there's a lot of cool mechanics here that could have even been better in a sequel. Like that reputation system, I think could have even been better with a sequel with some iteration. And then I doubt we're going to get that. So I'm kind of bummed about that. But that's just the way it goes.
Didn't hit as hard as, what was it, Jedi Survivor?
I
that
guess
the
so,
title?
and I kind
Yeah.
of even feel like the sequel for that one didn't really move the needle a whole lot. You know
Yeah.
what's funny? I always forget like the title of those games, but I played the first Jedi game, really enjoyed it, and then
Fallen Order. That's what it was.
Fallen Order, and then I borrowed Survivor from Taylor, and it was actually over this winter break. I was like, oh, I'm finally gonna play that. Like I borrowed it from like a year ago, and I just haven't got around it. But I was like, what do I want to play? I have this. Went to plug it in, realized that he gave me Fallen Order, and because of how generic the names are, I didn't even realize. Like I just
That's so funny.
Fallen Order sitting on the shelf waiting to go, and I'm like, oh, I even downloaded it and everything, and it wasn't until I booted up the game that I was like, this isn't the game that I wanted to play. So I'm gonna have to wait a bit longer before I get to that. But I'm obviously in no rush to get to it. But yeah, there you go.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. My number 4 on my list. I have Princess Peach Showtime.
okay, cool.
I really enjoyed this game. I think there was certain, if you're not aware, there's different costumes and different worlds that you participate in as Princess Peach, and it just kind of sets up your mechanics for what that world is. And there's some that I just didn't love as much as others, but luckily there's not too much of it. Like it is a very family oriented game. Like it doesn't. Like the mechanics aren't that challenging, but I just had such a good time like going through it. I really like the music in it, and I just love the different aesthetics that they give Peach with her different outfits. And I'm feasting for Peach games. Like Peach is like my favorite Mario character by far. And like Shay and I were talking about this because she had a Princess Peach game on the DS.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure it's the same one that I played like back in the day. And really not many other Peach titles like beyond that. So this is one that I was just really hyped for when it was announced. Got it. I just had a really great time with it. Like it's not a perfect game by any means, but I really like the story. I like the ending. I thought it was a nice cinematic type battle. You kind of go Super Saiyan mode as Peach, which is always awesome. So yeah, no, I thought it was really fantastic, but it didn't really have enough pizzazz to make me want to like go back and replay it. Like it's kind of just a one and done type of game, which I mean, it's unfortunate when it's that fun. Like you just want to have more more time with it to sink in. But yeah, no, it's really great and highly recommended to people. It's tough at like an $80 mark. I feel like it's maybe not the most value for your buck if you're, I don't know, like it's an expensive game, and Nintendo never does sales, but I don't know. In the future, if you see it at a used game store, definitely recommend picking it up.
I like that I have the Zelda game where you finally play Zelda, and you have the I guess it's a Peach game, but like the Mario game where you finally play as Peach as the main character. So
yeah, and last thing I'll say too, there's some really awesome like mechanics that you get with the different like there's like a martial arts one. There's one where you're like a fencer, and I'm like, just get this into Smash, like in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's like a different outfit. I love Peach, but I never play her in Smash because I don't love how buoyant she is. Like it fits the character. She's very floaty. But I want like a Sheik type, like mechanics on that character. So yeah, that's my.
I'd be down if they revamped her. Like I think they have Daisy in the game now, who has the same moveset. So like, let Daisy have the legacy Peach moveset and give Peach like this new crazy moveset with all this new potential that she got from this game. That'd be super cool. And then at the very least, all those costumes, rather than just having different palette swaps, like give us those different costumes. That would be so cool.
Because even in the Mario movie, right? Like she's in a more in your face kicking ass type of way, as opposed to like a damsel in distress. Like she's using the firepower. Like she's just popping off in these other medias for the character. So it's time to evolve the character.
Ditch the dress. Like let's just, and not in the nude way, but just like hit her up with like get her the striker's outfit, get her the detective outfit, Super Saiyan mode, like give her all these cool outfits. Because she deserves it for sure.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right, we are into the top three, which, as I mentioned, for me, this is the top tier. These are the huge, like all-timer kind of level games. Number 3 for me is Astrobot. Yeah, I've mentioned this for a couple of the games.
Kind of low, surprising.
You thought it was low?
I will say top 3. I don't know. It's the game of the year, right? Also best narrative, or was it narrative? Best game direction. Can't remember.
Best game direction, and then best family game. Yeah, won a few different categories there. But yeah, for me, this is that number 3 here. And yeah, this is another one that's like, man, the whole way through, I just had a great time. There was not a dull moment in here. It's just constantly giving you new crazy upgrades to use and crazy level designs. I loved all the kind of PlayStation levels, and I liked all the kind of PlayStation shoutouts in there. Of course, a lot of them went right over my head, but when I saw Sam Porter Bridges in there, I was like, oh, this is the cutest thing ever. And I just watch him do his goofy little animation at the home base and all this fun stuff. And they even added recently with the winter update, they added like a Jin outfit, like from Ghost of Tsushima. And so I rocked that to play the bonus level. It was just the coolest thing. So I think the main thing here is that this game, I talked about how when I first got a Nintendo Wii as like, whatever, 12-year-old, whatever, however old I was, that was just the coolest thing. I just felt like I was engaging with a game in like a whole new way. The motion controls, all that kind of thing. I feel like all the games are built around that. And that's kind of what Astrobot feels like for me. Like I feel like I'm like a kid again. The way it uses the controller in just like a very fun and creative way. Obviously the PlayStation 5 and all the things it's capable of, but then also just like the things in game when you're like every time you're going through main level, you get like a part that you can use to fix the PS5 like mothership, and you just like do these really fun little tactile robot arm movements to like pull off the grime, fix it up, dust it off, put it in, hammer in the nails, screw in the screws, and like it's just such a fun tactile experience. Anytime you get a bot, your controller pops up on screen. Your controller is also like your little spaceship, and like where the touchpad is, it's like almost like a little hot tub. Like they're all just sitting in this little thing, and you can just like fling your controller, and they'll just fly out like a trampoline and fall back in. And I just every time I got a new bot, I would just like chuck them around a little bit because it was just so cute and fun. And it's just fun to feel like a kid again playing a game because I just doesn't. I'm an old guy now. I'm almost 30 years old. I'm old and jaded. I don't have these kind of experiences anymore. But like from just the playfulness of it, but then also it just being a 3D platformer collectathon kind of thing, right? It feels very like playing Mario 64 again in a new, innovative way, but a game that just looks insanely good, has really good sound effects, is really well polished. The amount of things on screen, but the game like never dropped a single frame. Just such an impressive game. It's just so fun and bright and cheery and playful, and it's just joy for 20 hours straight. And then they added like a new level recently. Went back and played that, had a good time. And then on top of all that, like they have a few really challenging platforming levels in there too. I almost wanted a few more, but I think that's mostly just because I just didn't want to stop playing this game. I just wanted there to be more. It's one that I went back to, got the platinum, did everything you can, and I still just wanted to go back and play it some more. So yeah, and it's like every level, as I mentioned, kind of having new bot modes that you're getting, and that's always super fun, especially some of the ones like there's a God of War level where you have Kratos' axe and you're using that for a bunch of puzzles, and that's great. It's so much fun. So I cannot say enough good things about Astrobot. It deserves all the accolades that it's getting. It is just the most fun game of the year. I'll put it that way, for whatever that means. It's just super duper fun and playful and no friction. Just great time the whole way through.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. It's funny. I feel like I'm pretty similar to you in the sense of my top three just kind of being in a realm of their own.
Top
like
echelon.
It's nice. Very much. I was just looking at it, I'm like, man, this is just so much higher than the last two that I mentioned. Number three, I was kind of splitting hairs on my number two and number three here. I think I am going to put Helldivers 2, though, in my top three slot. Purely for the fact that I was busy this summer, home renos and stuff, but I feel like I played the game a lot at the beginning of the year and then just not at all. And then after kind of getting close to the Game Awards, that was when it was pop on my radar again. And then they had I don't even think it's a DLC. They just had new content that came out with.
They didn't have like a Killzone add-on or something like that.
I don't even know.
Maybe that's not out yet, or they announced it or something.
Because the new one was with the oh my gosh, I can't remember what their name are, but the new species of threat essentially in the galaxy. That's what's out now. The Illuminate, that's what they are. And just been jumping back in the game again, and it is just such a fucking well-made game. Like, it is just so fun to play. I think it's like a perfect shooter for like where I am in my life. Like, not necessarily a grindy type thing like Destiny. Like, I think it has that. Like, it rewards you if you really put in time. Like, you just get a lot of unlocks, but it's not like you have to get that just to participate in the game. I was kind of overwhelmed when I came back to it just because I hadn't played in a long time, and it is fucking chaotic when you're in some of these matches, and you're on like a higher difficulty, which means there's like harder enemies, and there's just so much going on. And I'm not sure if you remember the game. Well, you haven't played it, but you might have seen the game mechanics where like when you call in stuff, it's kind of like a number, like a sequencing
Right,
thing,
you
like
gotta
you're doing
pop
a
in the
GTA
code.
cheat
Yeah.
code essentially, and you have to like do them on the fly. And of course, but like I just memorize them for like what my I did not do that. So like my first game, I did it on like the challenging difficulty because you get more rewards and whatnot. And I was getting bopped. Like you get paired up, like you just quick play, so you just get paired up with whoever. And I was with
Yeah.
people that were like level 100, and just they were carrying me so hard. And I was just like, man, this is kind of unfortunate. Because like I don't know, it's fun to have it a harder difficulty because you really have to use everything in your arsenal to survive, and that's what makes it such a cinematic game. Like when you barely make it out and you're covered in bug guts and you have no ammo left, and like just Jimmy went flying and you're not going to recover him, like he's just left there, but you have to leave. Like those are the moments that that's like the peak of my Helldivers experience.
Nice.
And I feel like I kind of want to just like put it on like a lower difficulty to go in, maybe even just do like a solo run just to like refamiliarize myself with the mechanics and the like the loadouts and stuff that I'm using, because you have different guns play differently, different different like kill streaks, airstrikes and stuff. They play very differently. So I kind of just toned it down the difficulty just to kick off the dust in a matter of speaking. But no, I was talking to good old Hidalgo, and he's back on there, so we're gonna be jumping in there. And definitely, I don't think it's a Game Pass game, but if ever does, we gotta jump in there and get the whole lads together, because it is literally like an action movie when you're in when you're in there. And yeah, it's hard to like recreate some of the moments. Like I just feel like some things that happen in it's just hard to explain because they're just so chaotic, and there's so many moving pieces with so many things on screen, and I never get frame drops or anything, which is just so nice to have in a game that looks and feels that good. When it's action packed, you don't want to be dropping frames, and it never is. And could be higher, but just my lack of playtime throughout the whole year, I think I had to put it in the number 3 slot. But highly recommend that game. And it's fantastic.
That's a good shout out for me as like one that I probably would have loved if I got around to it. I forgot to mention that earlier, just because when it came out, I didn't have a PS5 or a PC that's strong enough for it. And I do now, but then it's like, I was playing a lot of things in the last few weeks, and I just didn't feel like picking that up and trying to make time for it, because I just feel like that's not a game I just want to rush through and play like a bunch in like 2 weeks to try and fit it into a top 10. It just feels like one I should spend more time with over time. So yeah, that's definitely a good shout out there. And it's funny with my number 3, like in Astrobot, there's a mission where you're saving a bunch of the Helldiver bots.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then like they have their funny little formation back at the base, and you get different little items for them. So yeah, good times. Little PlayStation number 3 there for both of us.
Hell yeah.
Cool. Moving on, number 2 for me is going to be Balatro. I wish I could have the music just come in right here and just like amp that up, because the music is so good. This is a funny one where I just kind of like accidentally put like 80 hours into it. That's the kind of game it is, where I was playing it endlessly, could not put it down, just constantly doing runs, want to sneak a run in, do it while I'm watching TV. I just couldn't put it down. And then I got to a point where it was getting like, I guess I was getting high enough in the tiers that it was getting really hard and almost grindy. Like I just had to keep restarting and hope I was getting a good spawn at the beginning. And I was kind of like, hey, I should just stop playing this game. I need to like mindfully tell myself to stop playing it. You could never like be done with this game because it's an endless roguelike type thing, right? But just for the sake of like having a life outside of Balatro, like in that gambler addiction way, I had to be like, I have to stop playing Balatro. I need to put this game down. I've put 80 hours into it. That is enough. And in the last couple weeks, I've been trying to play a little bit more, just to kind of, I always like to revisit a lot of my Game of the Year stuff just to see how I feel about it. Especially back in December. And yeah, it's like the game feel is so good. The sound effects are godlike. It's funny too when I mentioned how I got my dad to play on his iPad, and like the game moves so slow because you can like turn up like the game speed, and I've done that over the course of the month. So okay, I'm moving along quickly enough. Let me bump it up again. And so now my game like moves super duper fast, but my dad's is like 5 points, 5 points, 5 points. 15. Like it does, like it's very slow rollout now, but I'm just like in hyper mode. Like I'm just like speed.
It's your Uno Rush coming back.
Oh yeah, it's scratching that same Uno Rush itch to me. But yeah, I mean, as far as roguelikes go, it has so much variety in terms of the builds and the crazy things you can find. I love the vibe of this game. It's like weird and kind of obscure, and silly at times too, but like it also is never like too over the top silly. You know, there isn't like characters speaking or whatever, but just like the design on the different cards and some of the weird things that you're finding. You know, challenges in there to give you specific runs, like tiering up all the different decks, which add a ton of different variety and ways you got to play. Just in terms of roguelike, it just totally nails it. And yeah, it's really just the vibes. Like this game only has one song, but the song is so freaking good that you never get tired of it, and just puts you in that gambler's mood in the same way that like casinos have like specific music designed to make it so you never want to leave. You know, it's like the same thing here. We're just constantly in the mood of it. But yeah, it's just like a triumph in like game feel. Like it's just such a juicy, good feeling game. Really well designed, super duper fun. And yeah, in this last couple weeks, so like after doing 1 or 2 runs, I'm like, I could easily get back into this addiction and just like constantly play it again. Trying to stop, trying to hold back because 80 hours is enough. But yeah, I just Balatro is super duper good and so impressive. One developer plus one composer. It's crazy that such small scale of a team made like such a huge game for the industry. I can't say enough good things about Balatro. It's just super duper fun. And yeah, number 2 of the year for me.
Nice. Hell yeah. Okay. Top 2. This is a tricky one for me. I think I'm gonna have to put this almost hurts. I'm gonna have to put Stellar Blade here as my number 2, not my number 1. Yeah. The reason being is because I feel like I kind of did this to myself. I was enjoying the game so much in the early portions that I just kind of committed. I'm like, I'm gonna platinum this game. I'm gonna do it. I don't care. You go online to like the trophy walkthrough or whatever. It's whoever makes those also shouts out to these people because like there's just so much in here that I'm like, I never would have gotten this platinum ever on my own because this game requires multiple like completions to get the trophy. And then in this guide they like break down the min-max way to do it so you don't have to play the game 4 different times. It's like you basically collect everything you can in the first playthrough and then you make a save and then you're able to like kind of redo the ending without having to play through the whole game multiple times, which is just like it is a lengthy game. And also when you're having to collect everything like I kind of committed myself to, it's a slog at times. And again, like it's something I didn't have to do, but I'm just like, I'm gonna do it. And I'm at the point of no return where I don't want to just progress further on without collecting everything because I've just made it this far. So that kind of like bummed me out a little bit on some of the enjoyment I had of the game, and it's completely self-induced. Like the game on its own is phenomenal. I love the combat of it. I love the music. I love the world design, just the creatures and everything about it. Like they just did such a great job with this game. The scale of everything just feels so massive in a similar way to how Nier Automata does with just some of the battles. It's just like you're fighting Goliath and you're David, and it's just like it just feels like I'm on the same power level in a certain way. So yeah, I really, really love this game. It's just so like just well made, honestly. Like I don't ever get frame drops, and it looks like everything's at 4K like all times. Like it just looks so beautiful. And that's not just because the main character, like the world around it just looks beautiful, even though it's very post-apocalyptic. Again, in a similar way to Nier Automata is like everything's like dead in a desert, but there's still just really there's a lot of beauty in it. And yeah, this game is able to capture a lot of that same energy and vibe into it. And yeah, I'm really, really loving it. I haven't rolled credits because I'm just on my collectathon trying to get all my cans and whatnot. But it's going to be one that when I do get the platinum, I'm just going to feel like Frodo tossing the ring into the Mount Doom and just feel so happy with it because it's a lot harder, I think, of a platinum than I was expecting. Not in the sense of like I have to beat 1,000 different enemies without dying, but it's just like doing everything in an order and like the stick-to-itiveness that you need to in order to just get over all the collecting. It's a little bit challenging, but what a phenomenal game, and I'm really glad I picked this one up.
Very nice. Yeah, that's a great number 2.
Yeah,
great number 2 for the year. I'm curious what your number 1 is. I have an idea, but I don't know if there's a curveball that I'm forgetting about. But I think I know what it is. We'll see. My number 1 for the year. I'll apologize in advance. This will probably be a lengthy sequence talking about this one, but that's because it's 50 games in one. I'm going to be talking about UFO 50. It's funny, as I've been playing this game and I've been thinking about my top 10 in the last few months of the year. It's like I don't know when exactly the point was when this became number one, but obviously, like, it's just such a big undertaking. 50 games in one, you kind of play them whatever order you want, right? So it's like, I don't know at what point it became my number one, but at some point I was like, oh yeah, this is definitely my game of the year at this point. I can't put this game down. It is so good. There's obviously so much to it. I'll give you my stats here for UFO 50. So I'm at 86 hours now, and that does not
Nice.
include some co-op I've done like on other friends' saves and stuff like
Oh,
that. So
okay.
probably closer to 90 hours as a general thing there. And then the way the game breaks it down is like, so when you boot up the game for the first time, all 50 games are right there in front of you. You don't have to unlock any of them. They're all just right there. And they're all dusty and covered in cobwebs. And then when you pick a game, you like dust it off and then you start playing it. And then it becomes like a blue cartridge. That means you've
Mm,
played it. And then when you've beat a game, you get a gold cartridge for it. And then there's like a cherry cartridge. And so a cherry cartridge is when you've either beaten the game in a harder way, like maybe it has an alternative ending, maybe you beat the game with a certain high score, maybe it's getting all the collectibles. It's kind of different for every game depending on what kind of game it is, right? But a cherry is kind of like that's the platinum trophy for every individual
yeah.
game, I guess you could say. So right now I have 8 cherries, 19 gold cartridges, 19 blue. And I think this is why I am so confident in this being my game of the year. Is I still have 4 games I haven't even touched in this collection.
Wow.
Of 86 hours, there's still 4 games I have not even booted up. They still have cobwebs on them on my screen there. I haven't even booted them up just to get the cobwebs off. I kind of like having some things still in reserve. And that's been that way for like probably 40 hours. Like I probably have had just those 4 games left. I think that's such a fun part about UFO 50 is like how you choose to go through the collection. You know, a lot of people, they're like, oh, I'm going to start from the first game and go chronologically through them all. I've been listening to a podcast where they literally are dedicating a year to UFO 50, and every episode, every week, they're doing one game, the next one in the tier. You know, some people will jump around. Maybe some people will go through like certain genres first, that kind of thing. For me, it's just going off like pure feel. Like when I first booted it up, I just saw Pilot Quest and Pilot's a character from Splunky, so I'm like, I'm gonna play that one first. And then it's really just been jumping around, and every once in a while I'm like, okay, I need a new game to play to add in my rotation. Because every time you boot up UFO 50, it's like going down to have a meal. And I always like to have like a little appetizer game. So I play something really quick that I don't really think about, and then maybe go into a deeper, longer game, and then maybe like something to close out, a little dessert at the end. And so I feel like every time I boot up UFO 50, I'm like, hey, maybe do I want like a new game to add in my collection? Do I want to just like go back to something I've played before? Do I want to play more of that? Do I want to try and get the cherry on this one game? And so I feel like, yeah, there's still 4 games that I haven't even touched in here. That's a very exciting thing. To quickly speak about the package as a whole, like I love the framing of everything, that everything is given a year that it came out in this fictional console's lifespan. As you can, like, the first games don't have a UFO soft, like a developer intro, and then eventually they created the developer name, and then that has the intro for all the games. They eventually start to get like credits. And there's like little tidbits you can learn about each game. And then like in the credits, there's like fictional developers that made each of one of these games. So you can track like, oh, this guy directed this game, did the art for that one, did the composing for this one. And it kind of shifts around. And I really love the framing of all of it. I think that's such a fun part about the collection. And then just like the things that bring them together, like they all share the same color palette, they all have the same resolution. So even though they're all very distinct, different games, and they look and sound and feel very different, there is ways that they're kind of tied together. And some of them are sequels or have certain characters from different games in there. So there's a lot of like fun ways that you can kind of put up your really complicated map of like, yeah, getting out the thread and the pins and just like, how do all these things connect? What is the story of all this stuff? Is really fun. And there's a lot of secrets even deeper beyond just the collection itself that I have barely even scratched the surface of. It's like pretty obscure to get to some of that stuff. And I've like barely touched some of it. So there's a lot of it there. Kirkland, I'm going to talk about every game a little bit. So like I said, this might take a little bit here, but I feel like, it's my game of the year and I want to praise it. And I was doing my kind of UFO 50 game of the week thing for a bit there. And I could keep doing that. And I probably will continue to shout out games even in the new year, but I want to do that here. So I've kind of, rather than giving like a ranking of my 50th favorite game to my first, because I haven't even played all of them yet, right? I can't really do that. I'm going to break it down in the same, I'm just going to have a little tier list the same way that the game does. So there's the Dusty tier, the 4 games I haven't played. Those are Combatants, Quibble Race, Valbrace, and Grimstone. And then there's the blue tier. These are games that, like, the crazy thing about this game is that there isn't a game I dislike. Some of them I'm like, I don't care much for it, but like there's none that I straight up dislike or dislike playing just in a general sense. And then there's a kind of, the blue tier is kind of just the games that I like, maybe I'm kind of mid on them. I feel like I need more time in them, that kind of thing. Gold tier, those are the games that I really, really love. Something special I love about them. And then the cherry tiers, like those are like the top tier, like the best of the best, the cream of the crop. So for the blue tier, a couple games that I feel like I need more time with: Vanger, Rock on Island, Avianos. I just feel like I've barely spent time in them. Rock on Island's like a tower defense game. Avianos is kind of like a Civ-like game. So obviously there's potential there for me to really enjoy those. I just need more time with them. Porgy and Divers, those are two kind of like water, like your water exploration games, and they're just a little sluggish. So maybe I just need more time in them to get the vibe of them, but haven't loved them so far. The Great Bell Race, or maybe it's Big Bell Race. I always forget what it's actually called. I kind of love this one contextually. There's other games in the collection, the Campanella trilogy, and this has the same controls, like your little UFO flying around, kind of like jetpack controls. But this is kind of like a Mario Karty type thing. It's kind of like a little racing thing, and I kind of love it contextually because in the setup of the collection, it's supposed to be like one of the multiplayer games. It's like a launch title with the console that they release in there, and I almost kind of use it as like a training to get better at like Campanella 1 and 2 to like really master those controls. So I love it contextually, but like as a game individually, it's just okay. Campanella 3 I haven't fallen in love with yet. Block Koala is kind of like of course, one of the 50 games had to be like a block pushing puzzle game, and that's what Block Koala is. I haven't found like the secret sauce to it yet. I've played 8 or 9 of the levels in there, but need to play more. Planet Zoldath, really interesting take on like a randomization of like a Zelda type of format. So it's cool, it's interesting, but I gotta maybe dive deeper in. Barbuda is the first game in the collection, and I love it for that because it's such a weird, obscure, difficult, hard game. It's just a little sluggish to play, but I have had a lot of fun. Like it's kind of like a Metroidvania, and I kind of had to like do a paper map to help figure out everything. So that one's really cool. Paint Chase, really great core mechanic. I think it's just a little repetitive doing the early levels over and over again. If you lose a run, you got to start from scratch, and it's a pretty slow paced game, so that can take a while. Devolition is a cool like chain reaction, like you're almost making like little Rube Goldberg machines on this map with like enemies and creating weird little chain reactions. It's cool. It's a game that I like accidentally cherried. Like I accidentally got like the bonus objective, and I was like, oh, it only took me like half an hour, 40 minutes to do that. And I was like, okay, is there like more here? I don't know. I kind of feel like I've done everything now, so it just felt like maybe it was lacking some depth. And then here, like some that I just feel like I'm bad at, but are really cool, but it's really just the fact that I'm not good at them is holding me back from liking them more. Those would be Fist Hell, Rakshasa, Golfaria, Karima Caramel, and Star Wasper. All games that I think have something really interesting beyond the surface, but I'm just so bad at them that like I just can't. I haven't got deep enough to like fall in love with them yet. So those are the blue tier games. Jumping up to the gold tier games. First up, I have Hyper Contender. This is the kind of the fighting game of the collection, and it's like a Smash Bros type. It's a platform fighter type thing, but like in a more confined arena. Like rather than knocking people off the map, you're like trying to knock rings out of them and then collect the rings. Super creative movesets. I really want to play this one with you and like the other boys on the 24-hour stream when this game comes to Switch inevitably, because I think it's gonna be really fun to mess around with this game. It's really cool. Hot Foot is like a dodgeball like game, so like what else you got to say? Just like cool. It's like dodgeball with hacky sacks, so it's just great, super fun. Pin Golf is like a 2D golf game. The main mechanic that like sets it apart from others, because there's a lot of golf games like that, is that midway through any strike, you can just like hit a button and like it will dunk the ball like downwards, and so you can like use that to like bank it and like bounce it off things, or just like get it to like a precise spot, or you can like across the map snipe the ball and then like try and dunk it into the hole. And even if it bounces out of the hole, as long as it like has touched the hole, then you get that stroke, I guess. You get the win. And so that's just really fun, really satisfying physics on that one. Pilot Quest, I'm always going to be like a bit nostalgic for this one, even though this game's like not that old. I'm already kind of nostalgic for some of the earlier games I played in the collection. As I mentioned, Pilot Quest is the very first one I booted up. And it has my boy Pilot in there from Splunky. And I like this one as like the meta mechanic. This one has like you're earning resources like while you're playing other games. So it's kind of like an interesting meta mechanic to it, which I really enjoy. Magic Garden, just a really good kind of arcade style score chaser, kind of like Snake or something, but with some fresh new mechanics. Cyber Owls, another gold cart here. Cyber Owls is a crazy game. This is the last one in the collection, and I feel like it's almost trying to be what UFO 50 is as a whole, but like down in one game. it kind of has like it's like anthropomorphic animals, but it feels like Metal Gear Solid in like a lot of the vibes of it. And it's like 5 games in one because you have 4 different characters and they all go on like their different mission around the world. You can play them in any order, and all 4 of those games are like a totally different genre. And then like if you lose a mission, they like get imprisoned, and then there's like this other game that happens when you can like send someone to go save them, and it's like a tactics thing. So it feels like the concept of UFO 50 boiled down to one, where it's like 5 genres in one. And it's like the most expansive in terms of like it being the last game in the collection. Like has the most story, has the most like cinematic camera stuff going on. The graphics feel really evolved, like tons of like music feels like an evolution. So I really like it as like the final game in the collection. I feel like it's really well placed there, and it's hard. It's really really fun. And I like it. Definitely has like the stealth action element to it, you know, in the Metal Gear type of way. Shouts to that one. We got a lot more here, Kirkland. Buckle up. Waldorf's Journey. This is a very silly game. It's kind of one of those games that has like just really weird, like intentionally bad controls, and part of the fun of it is like getting your positioning just right and getting your trajectories and all that. So it was fun to get like the gold on it and finally beat this game. But then it also has like a co-op mode that is like just a really fun like balloon fight-esque like competitive thing that you're doing against friends, which is really fun to do. Mooncat is a really interesting game. It's a 2D platformer that the controls are just so weird. It's kind of similar to Waldorf's Journey in this way that it's like this game makes you feel like you're playing a video game for the first time, and that you like have to figure out how everything works, how like every button, what it does, how to just move your character properly along the screen. I think in terms of like it's really successful at being like here's what playing a video game feels like for the first time. I'm someone who's played like hundreds of games, but I truly feel like anyone else playing their first video game here, so that's really cool. Mini and Max, this one I feel like is going to jump up to the cherry tier for me when I play more of it, but it is just a huge game. It has that theming I love, Kirkland, of like shrinking down to be like a mini character in a world. But what's crazy about this is you start out, you're a kid in your bedroom. You can walk around. It's like only like 5 or 6 tiles wide, like a pretty small bedroom. And then you shrink down to like mini size. And now the map is like, I don't know, probably like 30 screens wide. Like it becomes a huge map. But then where it gets like even more insane is that you can shrink down again to be like microscopic. And so I don't even know how many screens it would be. It must be like 1,000 or like hundreds at least. Like it is a huge scale. And a lot of the stuff you got to do is like down in that mini tiny realm. So really, really crazy, just the scale of it. And that's where it just feels like this is probably one of, if not the most expansive game in the whole collection. But on top of that, there's like tons of upgrades you're getting for your character. There's tons of quests and side quests you're doing around this world. And obviously because you can kind of go anywhere and shrink down in any particular pixel, it's completely non-linear too. So just a wild game. Like this on its own could have been sold as like a $15 game probably on Steam, and it would be hugely successful just because of how crazy the scale is of it. Next up, Onion Delivery is a game that, man, this took me so many plays to just like figure out how to play it. Like you're driving a car around a world. The controls are so tight and so difficult to get a hold of, but it was so fun just getting better at it. It feels like a Simpsons Hit and Run or like a Simpsons Road Rage. Like it is kind of like Crazy Taxi. You're making deliveries around this town, and as you go through the different days, like fire hydrants are popping like sludge out of the sewers, and there's zombies chasing you, and it's raining, so there's puddles everywhere. It just gets totally chaotic, but man, it was really, really fun getting better at this game. Chameleon is a cool, like, it's like a stealth game, but like boiled down to a puzzle game, which I feel like a lot of stealth games, if you really think about it, Kirkland, like a lot of stealth games are just like puzzle games, but in just like a different way, right? Like trying to figure out, how do I get through this particular room? What's like the specific movements, or like throwing a vase at a wall to distract a guard so I can sneak behind him, that kind of thing. And so I feel like Chameleon is really just boiling that idea down into like a tight way. And I think it's a really successful way of doing that. Really fun. Got the cherry on that one. Elphazar's Hat is a really weird, like top-down Zelda-like kind of thing. I love the theming of it. It's like very magic, like magician themed. It's very silly, but it has like a really cool upgrade system where when you're taking out enemies or destroying boxes, it'll drop little cards down, and depending on like the combination of cards you get, you'll get like different upgrades. And so it's really fun to like figure out what all these different things are. And it's like, how do I heal? You got to like figure out what combo of cards you got to pick up in order to heal, or like which ones you get to like get better upgrades for your character. Really, really fun game. Really enjoyed that one. And then Ninpek This is my last gold cart one here. And this one is like my go-to appetizer game, and using that food analogy I said earlier, where like for the first like month or two booting up UFO 50, I'd pretty much always boot up like Ninpek or Velgress, which is like a similar thing. And I would just boot that up, just have like a fun 2D platformer, and that would be my appetizer game. I'd do a run or two just to get me like warmed up, and then I'd jump into like a bigger experience. But super fun game, really tight controls, just super duper fun the whole way through. Whew, okay, take a little breather here. And then we'll jump into the cherry tier games. So these are the top tier games. First up, Night Manor. This is like a point and click adventure horror game. Just love it. Amazing art, amazing vibes, really great puzzles. I played this one like around Halloween, and it was like one of my favorite horror games of the year. Just really enjoyed it. Lords of Disconia is like a really cool RPG strategy game where there's like an overworld map, and you're trying to plot your route of how you're gonna outfox your enemy. Maybe I'm gonna go grab this mine so I can make more money. I'm gonna go to the tavern to buy more adventurers. Go over here to grab this upgrade, and like you're trying to sneak around your opponent. But then when you actually encounter them, you go into like almost like a shuffleboard or like a pool like tactics game where all your units are represented as like these little circular pegs, and you're kind of shooting them across the board and like bouncing them off in like a pool way. But there's so many, like, you know, all your units are like knights and dragons and spiders and vampires and all this stuff, and all of them interact in interesting, cool ways. It's crazy, and like the NPCs in this, like the computer players, can do like the craziest angles. Like they feel like they're hacking the game, and like somehow you can still just barely beat them, and using like clever, like creative things. Super duper cool game. I absolutely love it. Similar to that, Tactics is like it's almost like the top-down Tactics, like Fire Emblem-y game of the collection, but it's like, how can we make a Tactics game like the fastest game you've ever played? And so it's like every few seconds, all the units will shift up on the board towards each other in the middle, and so you're just kind of have to like quickly replace them, move them, shift the units in the right way, and it's very rock, paper, scissors-y in that Fire Emblem way, where it's like, okay, I got to make sure like my spear guy is going to take out the horse, got to put my archer here to take out this knight, and it's like all of that is frantically happening. You can't pause, so it's just constant. But I had so much fun, like mastering Tactics. Super great game. Bug Hunter, which I talked to you in depth on Sidequest about. That's kind of like what if Into the Breach was kind of boiled down to its core essence. So I love Bug Hunter. That's a great game. Party House, this is like the roguelike deck builder of the collection somehow. This is another game that I feel like could have been sold for like $10 on its own on Steam and would be one of the biggest games of the year. It is so good. It's the goofiest theming of like, the goal of the game is just to throw the perfect party. And so you're increasing your Rolodex of friends and people that you're inviting to your party, whether that is, like friends, and then like, you know, hiring a bartender or hiring a comedian to make your party even better. And it's just a great game. And you know what? On top of that, it has like a really fun competitive co-op mode you can do against your friends, which is like just crazy. I guess that's the thing I've mentioned in passing. Like a lot of these games just have co-op too, which is crazy for how ambitious this game already was. Warp Tank, really great, like kind of 2D, I don't even know, I guess puzzle platformer is how you would define it, but it's just a really weird game, really great. Every level is interesting in some way, and the overworld is kind of non-linear, so you can do things however you want. Seaside Drive, there's a few bullet hell games in the collection. I've mentioned a couple that were kind of in my blue tier, like I'm too bad at them. But Seaside Drive is the one that I was able to get pretty good at, and it's kind of themed as like you're driving this car on this like cool, like beautiful sunset in the background and shooting, and like it kind of depends on where you're moving around the map. Really, really cool. Really enjoyed that one. Bushido Ball is probably my favorite co-op game in the collection. It's like a fighting game, but it's like a fighting game tennis game at the same time. Like you're just hitting this ball back and forth, but you're playing as like samurais and stuff. And so you're hitting the ball in all sorts of weird ways. You figure out so many weird mechanics, like if you roll and then hit the ball, it'll like do a crazy curve shot. You're building up special meter in like a fighting game way. On top of that, it has co-op that you can do, like you can play with your friend in a 2-on-2, or you can play against your friend in a 1-on-1, which is super fun. And yeah, it's so much fun to play with a friend. I love this game. And on top of it has like a weird rules system where there's like, technically you can like hit your opponent with a stick at any point, but like that's against the rules. Like it's cheating, and like sometimes you'll get called out by the referee on things and sometimes you won't. And so like, I don't know, it makes for this really weird system. You can also like customize that in the settings too. So that's great. Kick Club, I don't even know what to say about this one. It's just a fun puzzle platform. You're kicking a ball around. It just has great game feel. Silly enemy designs, like little tennis balls that look like Mike Wazowski that are like hitting other tennis balls at you, or like basketballs and like ice skates and stupid stuff like that. Super fun game. Mortal 1 and 2, a really cool mechanic. I talked about that one in depth on Sidequest 2, where Mortal is like kind of that Sifu thing where you're going through these levels, you're trying to preserve lives to get further in. Just insanely well designed, a great core concept that is, and as I said, there's Mortal 1 and 2. So that core concept is explored in two different ways, where one is like a level based thing, and then one's more like an open world setting with like characters that have more in depth move sets. Just insanely cool games. Ones I'd love to see that like other developers get inspired by Mortal and just make games like that. Campanella 1 and 2. Campanella 1 is kind of like the arcadey going through with these fun jetpack mechanics, and then Campanella 2, it's pretty much like Spelunky. It's like the Spelunky game of the collection. So of course I'm gonna love that one a whole lot. I finally beat it. Finally got a gold card. Took me like probably 5 hours of runs just to finally beat the game once. And then of course I still have to get the cherry. There's still tons of secrets to find in it. So loved both the Campanella games. Similar to that, Velgress and Overbold are the two games that feature Alpha as the main character. Velgress is like a really fun, juicy reaction platformer, and then Overbold is like the risk reward, like battle arena one. Love both those games. Just such unreal games. And then lastly, Kirkland, one more game is Rail Heist, which I haven't talked to you about this game at all. And I think this is by far my favorite game in the collection, just as a whole. Like, this is not a ranked list, as I mentioned, but like Rail Heist is my number one game. And like, first of all, I finally beat this game over the last week here, and it was like 9 hours long to like beat the game. Like, that's just one game in the collection, 9 hours long. I freaking love Rail Heist so much. The theming of this one is cowboy setting. You're playing as the outlaws, and you're on this train, on this rail heist, of course, and you're just trying to steal the money from the guards, like the police that are guarding them, and then get out. You got to exfiltrate at the end. But it's kind of like an immersive sim in some ways. Like, it's a boiled down version of an immersive sim where everything in the game is like interactable in like so many different ways, where like even the walls, you can like bust through certain walls with your fists. Other ones you have to like shoot through. Other ones you can like blow up. And so like, even though the levels are designed in the way they are, it feels like you can go any which way you want if you're creative enough and think about them in out of box ways. Something as simple as like a box is like, okay, a box can be used as like platforms. You can make like staircases. You can make walls with them to block off enemies. You can use them as like a weapon, chuck a box at an enemy. Sometimes there's hidden things inside boxes. You can use it as like a distraction, throw a box into a wall to get an outlaw to go, or get a guard to go check it out and sneak by, that kind of stuff. I love this for like levers too. Like, levers are a very generic video game thing. You hit the lever, it opens a thing. But in this, like, levers are things you can just like pick up and throw around as well. So they also become like a weapon. But then because of that, you can also like, use them as like a staircase. You can shoot them from a distance. You can like load up your gun and like shoot a lever from across the map to like activate a thing. So really cool. And that's kind of just the case for every object in the game. Is like, there's like chickens and dynamite and cows, and all these things can be just like interacted with in so many different ways. And each level, kind of testing you in different ways. It's introducing new mechanics. And I think what kind of puts it over the edge for me is that each level has kind of like a Dishonored like goal to it, where like every level can be beaten non-lethally or full lethally, killing every single enemy. Or there's like also a speedrun objective for every level. And I've now got the cherry for it. So I've got all these medals on every level. And man, that just made the game like, every level is well designed. You just got to get the goal to get out, sure. But then like trying to get those objective on every level just made me fall in love with it so much more. Of like, usually the non-lethal was the hardest thing to do because the game is so zany and random shots are going off and it's so easy to accidentally kill an enemy on top of trying to do it without even interacting with them. So like interacting with every level and figuring out, how do I do this? Like, every level became just a puzzle in multiple ways. The speedrun objective was always difficult. Like, it always came down to like, I had 1 or 2 seconds when I finally got the perfect series of things of like planning it all out and then executing perfectly. And then full lethal, that's kind of like the easiest one, but it still is pretty hard on some levels, just because you are a one-shot kill for enemies too. So just that was what put the game over the top for me. I love Rail Heist. I was thinking about this a lot, and like, UFO 50 as a collection, obviously it's my game of the year, but like individual games, I don't know how many of them would have been like quality enough on their own to be like in the top 10. You wouldn't expect them to, right? It's a collection of 50 games. I think if you bundled certain things, like maybe the Campanella trilogy, maybe that would have been in my top 10. But like Rail Heist is the one so far where like this game on its own, I think it would have been top 5 on my list overall for the year. And it's just one game out of 50. So I absolutely love Rail Heist. Can't praise that game enough. And yeah, like I said, I love so many of the games in here. So there you go. I knew I was going to talk about UFO 50 for a while. I wanted to give it its flowers. I love this game, and I still have so much to do. As I mentioned, I want to get gold on every game. I don't think I necessarily want to get the cherry objective on every single game, but I want to get gold on every single one of them. So that's probably gonna take me like 200 hours. I don't know. It's gonna take a long time. And as I mentioned, there's other games I haven't even played yet. Oh, and on top of that, one of the games I haven't played, Grimstone, I think it's called, is like set in the same world as Rail Heist. So I have even more to like find in that world, which is really cool. Even if it's not like a direct sequel, it's kind of like more of an RPG. But whew, I think that's enough for UFO 50. I love this game. It's so good. And I love Kirkland when you were talking about like games you wanted to play that you didn't get to. You just shouted out my top 3: Astro Bot, Balatro, and UFO 50. So clearly on the podcast, I've talked about those things passionately enough for you to see the joy that I found in them. So whew, there you go. There's my number 1, and there's my top 10 overall. I got to take a sip of water here. Take it away, Kirkland. What's your game?
I was trying to, as you're going along, because like some of these titles you've just talked about in previous side quests.
Yeah.
I was just like searching up like images, and I fell behind hardcore early on. But no, Rail Heist. I just love the aesthetic. It reminds me of like something that I played on like Mini Clip or something back in the day.
It's so silly. It's such a slapstick, silly game where you have crazy chain reactions of things occurring. It's just amazing.
Awesome. Okay, well, that was a fantastic number 1. I feel like I have an extremely boring for many different ways. It's always a weird thing having an EA game on your number 1 for the year, especially if it's a sports title. But like, honestly, entering today, I think I had this game as like my number 3. But I would have just been lying to myself. I have over 200 hours played on College Football 25, which is just so random because it's just a football game. Like, it doesn't even have like the craziest in-depth like arcadey game modes or anything like that. But this year has been an interesting year for me where this is my first year I've actually like followed football. It's been really fun following it. We have a, chat on our GV Discord. So that's been like popping off every weekend leading up to the games. And then because I've just been in that football mindset, I've just been playing this game clearly a lot. Over 200 hours. Honestly, probably over 100 of those hours are like just purely in like it's not even called GM mode. I think it's called Dynasty mode, where you're the head of a school and you're just recruiting people and you're just trying to make the best recruitments that you can to make just the best team that you have. And I don't even play the games at all. It's just purely like the strategizing of it and just building up and like finding where I'm weak in certain areas. It's been such a great resource to pair with this being like the first year I've actually followed football, because I've just learned so much about different like I know like all the positions now, because I'm like I'm recruiting individual players for like who's going to be where and what kind of stats I want them to have that fits the best for my specific setup or scheme or whatever plays that we're doing. So it's just been such a fantastic pairing, and it kind of surprised me like how much I've actually played this game, because I feel like I'm just like every week I'm just booting it up and just doing a little bit at a time. And then of course when you do that every week leading up to now, the hours clearly line up. But no, this has got to be my game of the year. It's just the best football game ever made, mechanics wise. Cinematics wise, like they just did such a great job at capturing the elements of like a big stadium feel. The audio feels so good, and EA, especially for like Madden, I feel like has just had a bad rep because it's just like they just recycle the exact same assets, and this one is actually something new. Like it really feels different than previous Madden games that I've played. I haven't played all of them, but I don't know. I played like 2008 and then like 2018, and it feels like the exact same game, so that's never a good sign. But this really feels different. It feels faster paced and more arcadey than a Madden game, which I think adds to just the overall enjoyment of the feel of everything. And yeah, the game modes are fantastic. It's funny too, because like I don't even watch college football at all. Like I don't follow it, but I know like all about it now because of this game. I know like all the school. There's like over 100+ schools in this game. Like it's just the roster is insane. And yeah, no, it's just fantastic. I recommend it to a football fan out there. Definitely get this over Madden. It's fun because it's made by the same people, like EA Sports, but like this one really highly rated, and then like the newest Madden is just like awful. Everybody says don't get it. Like it's just the exact same thing as last year.
Yeah, maybe they didn't have like a time constraint on college football. They're like, release it whenever you're ready, and so they like took more time and put more love and care into it. Or as Madden's like, you gotta hit that deadline, baby. Like you don't want to miss that deadline.
That's honestly probably a good point, because I think the last college game it was like 2013 or something. So it was a long time between that one and now, and Yeah, it's just fantastic. It's wild that a football game is my number one.
Yeah.
And like it's just straight up sports sim game. Like it's not like it's an arcadey, you know, like Madden Street or something like that. So yeah, it's it's amazing. Kind of surprising. Even coming into today, I'm like, nah, it's not gonna be my top one, but
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of just would have been lying to myself. Just based on like hours alone. Like
Yeah.
I think
That speaks for
Helldivers,
it, man.
I have,
200
like,
hours, like
yeah.
that's impressive. That means that you were just couldn't put it down. And I can confirm now that I'm on PlayStation and whenever I see you online, it's like, yeah, he's probably playing college football.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. It's a good like laid back game too.
Yeah.
'Cause especially I'm not playing the games. Like I just have it open, you know, a couple decisions here and there. Go make dinner, come back, make a couple more decisions, sim some weeks.
Yeah, nice.
But yeah, I think I'm on like year 8 or something
Nice.
of my school, and I started as like a 1.5 star. I'm like a 4. I
Okay.
peaked at 4.5. A couple of my seniors graduated, which is never great, but
Mm.
it's just so fun. And then yeah, it's good stuff.
I love it. I'm so happy you have it on your list and have it like at number one, because I in listening to some other Game of the Year podcasts, I feel like a lot of them have been like, oh yeah, I heard that college football is like actually good, but like I didn't play it, and I've heard that so much, and so I'm so glad that you actually did play it and played a lot of it and
Yeah.
can confirm that. Like, oh yeah, they didn't phone it in. Like it's so easy to say that
Yeah.
for EA because they often do, but yeah, in this case they put their heart and soul into it. It seems like so, and I love that that's not even like the football that you're watching for the league and stuff, but you're still just that into it because of how good the mechanics are. That's awesome.
Yeah, totally. I feel like with myself too, because I've always played these sports games. Like every year, like on a game of the year list. Like I probably could have mentioned something, whether I was playing like NBA 2K or NHL, like all these sports
F1,
games.
yeah,
But they're never like actually good enough for me to be like, yeah, it's my
right.
game of the year. Even though I might have put in a lot of hours just for playing with friends or whatnot. Back in the day, I was a big FIFA player, but like. Yeah, no, this is honestly the best game I think I've played this year.
Yeah.
Well, for myself at least.
Yeah.
But
No, I sympathize with that. Where yeah, that's like similar to Star Wars Outlaws. Where I'm like, I would be a cooler person if I put mouthwashing out 4. But you know what? I gotta be true to myself. And so
Yeah.
I'm glad that you were true to yourself, because that is definitely your game of the year. So
Yeah.
right on. Yeah. Quick recap. So my list. Number 10, Indiana Jones: The Great Circle. Number 9, Animal Well. Number 8, Pacific Drive. Number 7, Outlast Trials. 6, Mouthwashing. 5, Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. 4, Star Wars Outlaws. 3, Astrobot. 2, Balatro, and 1, UFO 50. What was your top 5? One more time there.
Top 5, I got Plucky Squire, number 5, number 4, Princess Peach, and then I have Helldivers 2, followed by Stellar Blade and College Football 25.
I thought we have nothing in common, funnily
Yeah.
enough. It's funny how that happened. I guess, yeah, Plucky Squire was not quite a top 10er
Yeah.
for me, maybe in my top 20, but yeah, that would have been the closest one, I think. But yeah, really, really fun. Kirkland, thank you so much for joining me. This is so much fun.
Yeah, it was good.
Always love the Game of the Year episode. And yeah, we'll be back next week as we always are with more Sidequest. Thank you everyone for listening. Please let us know your Game of the Year. I want to hear what other people had for their favorites out there. Let us know in YouTube comments, join the Discord, tell us there, or leave it in a review, on a nice 5-star review of Apple or Spotify or something like that. That would mean the world to us too. So thank you everyone for listening to this episode and the whole year of Sidequest, and we will see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.